Good evening. I'm going to call to order the City of San Carlos City Council successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency Housing Authority regular meeting for August 28th. We have everyone's here in person, so no Assembly Bill 2449. So if you'll please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Are there any changes to the order of the agenda?
Nothing from staff this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Council, any requests? Okay. Greg, is there any report from closed session?
There's no reportable action from closed session, but I might add that we haven't completed the special meeting, so the council is adjourned to continue that meeting to after the regular meeting.
Thank you. It will be a long night for us, or early morning. All right. Next is our presentations, and I'm even though we didn't, I'm going to switch this because I would like to do the city coin second, and we'll do the proclamation first. So we'll start that. So from Rotary, we're going to do the medical equipment loan program. We'll do 6B first, then 6A. I should have changed it before. But all right. So who's going to come up? I know we have a lot of Rotarians here today. We're getting like double Rotary today. All right. We're doing a proclamation to recognize the medical equipment loan program, which is housed in San Carlos. We just, I guess it was last month, maybe we did the opening, 3 weeks ago, still this month. All right, time flies. Or time doesn't fly, I guess, if it still was in August. And it's been a great program for the community. I was happy to be be there for the opening ceremony, and really appreciative to have Rotary and the Villages and Able Closet here in San Carlos for this program. So, whereas the Medical Equipment Loan Program is a nonprofit organization that aims to assist those in need of medical equipment by taking in donated equipment from those who no longer require it and making them available for loan at no cost to clients who live within the Mid-Peninsula area. And whereas in its first 20 months of operation, the Medical Equipment Loan Program, or MELP, I might revert to that at some point, has loaned out 874 items, donated 506 items to other nonprofits, including donations to Ukraine relief organizations, and recycled 157 items as metal or plastic. And whereas through the dedicated efforts of its volunteers, the Medical Equipment Loan Program has continued to grow in the last 2 years and has recently partnered with Able Closet, a nonprofit equipment lending program that provides an opportunity for children with disabilities and special needs to browse and borrow rehabilitative equipment at no cost to their family. And whereas both the Medical Equipment Loan Program and Able Closet are supported by the Rotary Clubs of Belmont and San Carlos and the Villages of San Mateo County and co-reside at 1063 East San Carlos Avenue in San Carlos, now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Adam Rack, Mayor of the City of San Carlos, on behalf of the entire City Council, hereby recognize the Medical Equipment Loan Program for its service to the community and encourage everyone to support this invaluable resource. You can do it right here. You're good.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor. It was great to have you. This project has taken a lot of partners. We've got our partners from San Carlos Rotary Club, Dan Taylor there. There's Kathleen from Belmont Rotary Club, Diane from the Villages, and Norm from the Villages. Oh, which way?
It's this way. Talk to us.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so anyway, just wanted you to know, of the now 968 items loaned out, 20% have been loaned out to residents of San Carlos, and now we have our facility here, so we're great. It's great to have recognition from you guys. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
All right. Do we have any public comment on this item?
I do see one hand up from
Okay.
Charles Stone.
Okay, and then we'll go to council comment on that one. Sorry, should I first?
Thank you very much. My name is Charles Stone. I'm actually here to speak on the other item. I hadn't even spotted this, but as a fellow Belmont Redwood Shores Rotarian, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Steve and everyone else who did so much work on this, and a special thank you to the dignitaries like Adam and Josh Becker who showed up. This is a tremendously important program that's near and dear to my heart because I've had elderly parents who very easily could not have been in a position to get the type of assistive devices they would have needed, and the fact that this is out there now is fantastic. So just a quick, huge kudos to everyone who was involved. Thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just want to say I truly do appreciate everything the Rotary does, and this program in particular, Medical Equipment Loan Program, is just such a perfect blend of good community and big impact. So I just applaud you guys for this program, and just know it's helping a lot of folks out there. So thank you.
I don't see other, so now let's move on to the next item, which is 6A, present a city coin to community volunteer Cameron Miller. We might be here for a while because there's a long list of accomplishments, so. All right, so this year, as mayor, I decided to figure out a way to kind of recognize some of our fantastic community volunteers. The good news is they keep coming, which is awesome, which is a testament to our community and how great it is. We have a couple City Coin winners here, so they keep coming back to meetings too, which is great. Maybe that's a way to kind of keep encouraging to attend. But it was, someone mentioned to me like, oh my gosh, you should totally recognize Cameron. And I said, absolutely, it's a great opportunity to do that. And he's done so much for the Rotary and for so many other organizations. So I'm going to read a few of his accomplishments and then let him really talk about it because he is the star of the show here. So, so I got, this is all from your daughter, so if it's, all right. So Cameron, what's your wife's name? Bonnie. Bonnie. All right. Is Bonnie here? All right, Bonnie. All right. So they both moved here to the Bay Area in San Carlos in the 90s, and I don't think they've stopped volunteering since. Cameron is a member of the San Carlos Rotary and has been since 1989. He was president of from 1998 to 1999. It was on the board for many years. He was the chair of the Rotary Scholarships Committee for 25 years, which issued scholarships to over 350 San Carlos youth during his tenure. He's been active in the San Carlos Youth Softball Association for both his daughter and granddaughter, was president in 2004 and on the board multiple other years, was a head or assistant coach for both spring rec teams and summer travel teams for many years. I'm sure they were really successful as well. See? All right. Was a coach for the San Carlos American Youth Soccer Association. There's a lot of SCY acronyms in here. And was a coach and board member of the San Carlos, California Youth Soccer Association. Was also a volunteer referee for AYSO and CYSA. He's been on the Youth Center Foundation board since it was started and still is, and was a founding member who pushed through getting the Youth Center built. He's been on the Park and Rec Foundation since its inception and is still on as acting treasurer and has been for 15 years. He's also a member of the Railroad Corridor Citizens Land Use Committee. I didn't expect that one.
Nobody even remembers that.
No. So, and I'm sure I can go on and on about Cameron's impact on the community, but I'm really pleased and honored to present him with a city coin as a token of our appreciation for all his years of service to our community.
How do you get a retired lawyer to shut up? Well, first, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. It's a real pleasure. I've known a couple of you for quite some time doing volunteer stuff together with Sarah and Ron over the years, and a lot of people here in town. without all the people that are here and doing things for the city and for people who live around here, nothing would ever get done. So, that's it's kind of a privilege to be honored. Looking around here, I see a lot of people that want to be honored. Ott Vondenhout, Jonathan Nicholas, all these people that really have done a lot of things. Anyway, I guess I started doing city stuff with the Citizens Committee for what to do with the property that Caltrain was was transferring over to the city. And I think that was it early 90s, Ron? Something like that? Yeah, it was a long time ago. We moved here in 95. So it might have even been before that because I was, in the Rotary Club for years before that. Anyway, oh, Greg, you're still wearing a suit. You should retire. Anyway, people that are here, I've had the privilege of coaching my daughter, Kelly, who's sitting over there for, about 8, 9 years softball. Yeah, my granddaughter, Madeline, over there for 4 or 5 years, summer softball. I have a great niece, Sierra, sitting back there with my sister, Janice. My brother Rob and his wife Brenda are here. My daughter Lynn and her husband Jason. Howie Clark and Doug McFeeters back there. We started together in the Menlo Park DMLA. I was trying to figure it out earlier. I think probably I met them in 1966. Because I think you start in DMLA when you're 13. So, so that was a long time ago. I've known those guys for that long, which is kind of something. And then people I've met more recently on the Parks and Rec Foundation, which, that's kind of near and dear to our heart now. I think the Parks and Rec Foundation President Richard Armanino is here, and we do a good job. All I do is write the check. Those folks do all the work. Anyway, and of course, none of this would be possible if it wasn't for my wife allowing me to have the time to go out and do all these things and kind of be away from home and be part of the community while she worked hard and volunteered and did everything else. So that's Bonnie. At least stand up and let everybody see what you look like. Anyway, you guys have a million things. I know you have a long agenda, and I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much. I'm truly honored.
All right, thank you, Cameron. I see we've got Councilmember McDowell. Did you have your?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say congratulations, Cameron. I met you on the Parks and Rec Foundation, but you and I really bonded over the food distributions at One Life, and I got to know your big heart, and we all heard your great laugh tonight. And, I think there's special people in this community who show up when things are fun, but when things are really hard, really special people show up, and those food distributions were hard and kind of heartbreaking some days, and you showed up. You showed up with your big heart, and you really just made a difference in our community in a big way. And so I just want to thank you, and you are so well deserving of this award. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for recognizing Cameron.
All right, Krista, is there a public comment on this item?
I do see one hand up. We are taking public comments for this item.
So this is for 6A, present a city coin to community volunteer Cameron Miller.
Okay, the hand is still up, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute Charles Stone.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say a brief word about a little bit of Cameron's service that wasn't quite as emphasized. My daughter played youth softball for what seems like 28 years. At least that's what it felt like on the road to Stockton all those mornings. But during that time, I got to see Cam as an umpire. You can't have softball, you can't have baseball, you can't have soccer, you can't have any of these youth sporting opportunities without officials. And as thankless as being a commissioner, a volunteer, or a council member can be, I am quite certain there is no job more thankless than being a youth softball or baseball umpire. And I watched Cameron endure the slings and arrows of rough parents and be incredibly dignified as an official and incredibly supportive emotionally of the kids. And that's always what stuck out to me. Before I even knew who he was, I had noticed that he was exceptionally good, especially with the younger kids, about making sure they didn't take it too seriously and keeping a jocular attitude. These days, there's a shortage of sports officials in youth leagues, and it's a problem. And I think we're all very lucky to have Cameron in that role. And near as I can remember, I think there were only 3 or 4 dozen calls I disagreed with, but no, I'm kidding. He was an excellent umpire. Anyway, Cameron, I wanted to be there tonight to shake your hand in person, but I've got a really rough cold, so I'm calling in. Thank you for all of your years of service to the various leagues, and especially those to the youth softball organizations. Congratulations.
All right, we're going to move to item 7. If folks can stick around for a couple minutes till we do the consent calendar, then you're welcome to stay all night with us. But if you can stick around for about 10 more minutes, that would be fantastic. It would be less disruptive. So let me turn to, and plus you'll hear all these great announcements from us. So 7 is council communications and announcements. Do my colleagues have anything they would like to share? If not, I will. Okay. I have 3 items. One, the Civics Academy is coming back. It is formerly known as Citizens Academy, so that will be returning this fall. There'll be 6 sessions lasting 90 minutes each. It's a great opportunity to participate, learn more about how the city runs, how government runs. Anyone age 14 and older who lives or works in San Carlos is eligible to participate. There'll also be free childcare for anyone who needs it during that time. And you can visit the cityofsancarlos.org/Civics Academy to learn more and to register. The deadline to apply is Sunday, September 24th, so I hope you all will consider that. I did have a chance, speaking of Park and Rec Foundation, to kick off the Footloose Run in the park, both of our open space parks. There was, Sandy Pietmeyer was dressed as a latte, so if you missed that, I'm sorry to hear that, but there is photo evidence. It was a wonderful event. They had, I think, over about 150 people sign up for the first one, a really great opportunity to support our trails and our trail systems. All the funds for that will go to improve our trails. Vice Mayor John Dugan ran. There is even evidence of him finishing, so that's another good sign. And he's still here today. So just a great community event, and I hope it will be one that not be just the first one that will continue on for a number of years to go. And then thirdly, on Friday, we got a big check. So Assemblymember Diane Pappin was able to get some funds for us for Safe Routes to School for $150,000, and we were presented that on Friday. It'll be working on around by Central and Arroyo schools in that intersection near Arroyo and Woodland and School. So another great opportunity for us to improve our walking and getting more people walking to school. So, and I had to check, so good problem. All right, and if I don't see any other hands, we'll go right to public comment. Persons wishing to address City Council on matters not on the posted agenda may do so. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. If there are more than 5 individuals wishing to speak during public comment, the mayor may choose to allow the first 5 speakers to speak during this time, and the balance of the public comment speakers will be called upon at the end of the meeting. Crystal, is there any public comment for items not on the agenda?
I do not have any speaker slips for in person, and one hand just came up on Zoom.
Okay.
Go ahead and take that from Giovanni.
Okay.
Giovanni, I see that you unmuted.
Hello, can you folks hear me? How you doing tonight?
Yes.
Great, thanks.
I was just curious to inquire. I listened in on the Planning Commission meeting last week, and I had to step away for a brief moment because I had a little child need incident. I briefly kind of heard something about the EIR being waived for the Quarry Road project, and we're all kind of wondering how did that happen, or why did that happen, or did that happen?
So what I'll do is ask if you can stay on, and we can have staff get back to you, or get your information and get back to you with the information on that, but we did consider that previously.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Is there any other public comment?
There are no other hands.
Okay. All right. So with that, I'll move on to number 9, the consent calendar. And I think there's one correction on K, Crystal.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to just call your attention to consent calendar item K. The 2023 sewer rehab project no longer requires an appropriation, as noted on the agenda title. The staff report and the resolution in the packet have the appropriate actions needed from council, so there's no need to include this update in the motion when you're adopting the consent calendar.
So we just do it without the word appropriating, or do we need to, we don't need this item at all?
There is no appropriation needed. But no,
Okay.
the item is needed, but that action for appropriating is not needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended, or to make a motion to amend it? And
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve City Council consent calendar items A through K and item L, adopting ordinance number 1598, an ordinance of the City of San Carlos approving the 642 Quarry Road Plan Development Plan and related zoning map amendment to rezone the project site from light industrial to planned development at 642 Quarry Road, APN 046-041-380. And item M, adopting ordinance number 1599, an ordinance of the City of San Carlos approving a development agreement with 642 Quarry Owner LLC for the 642 Quarry Road project.
Second.
okay, Chris, we have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll?
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Venkatesh?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
And Mayor Rack?
Yes. Okay, the motion passes 5-0. So if folks want to clear out, this is a good time to do that.
Night. You know, Cameron just sort of got over a big bout of cancer. I know, it was amazing. I don't know if he lost his hair or what, but it all grew back.
Okay. We're going to move on to item 10A under new business, consideration of adopting a resolution, adopting a memorandum of understanding between the City of San Carlos and the American Local 856 Freight Checkers, Clerical Employees and Helpers Union, International Brother of Teamsters Unit for the period of September 1st, 2023 through August 31st, 2026. Rebecca Mendenhall.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Rebecca Mendenhall, Administrative Services Director. So again, before you tonight is the consideration of adopting an MOU or Memorandum of Understanding with the Teamsters Unit. This unit is comprised of 21 budgeted positions, including the classifications of maintenance worker, senior maintenance worker, and senior mechanic. In accordance with the city's employer-employee relations resolution, the city officials met and conferred in good faith with members of the Teamsters Unit and have agreed to the following terms. So the agreement will be for 3 years, commencing on September 1st, 2023, and ending on August 31st, 2026. Included are salary or cost of living adjustments in the amount of 5% in the first year and 3% in the second and third years. In addition to the COLA increases, there are some equity adjustments that will also be applied over the 3-year term. The equity adjustments were made following work done with the Council Employee Recruitment and Retention Subcommittee. Staff met with the committee for 6 months to review census data, including turnover ratios, recruitment statistics, and market comparables in neighboring agencies. As a result of these meetings, some positions are eligible for equity adjustments to help retain and recruit the best candidates. In addition to the salary changes, the following items were also negotiated. A change to the overtime pay to be 2 times the regular rate of pay for hours worked in excess of 12 hours. We've increased the deferred compensation match from a maximum of $50 per pay period to $225 per month. We've included the California Water Environment Association, or CWEA, certification pay at $50 per certification. We've increased the safety shoe allowance from $300 to $350 per year. and increase the tuition reimbursement allowance from $1,250 to $3,000 per year. We've removed the 2% administration fee applied for enrollment for the vision plan. We've updated the bereavement language to comply with the state laws. And finally, the city has agreed to designate Juneteenth as an observed and paid holiday. The total cost for this contract averaged 7.6% over the 3-year period. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Rebecca. Then my colleagues have any questions? Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick one on, so Juneteenth, that'll now be a citywide holiday for all employees?
Yes.
Okay, and so I assume that's going to be taken in consideration in the other negotiations
But
under.
right now with the Teamsters, it's in the Teamsters agreement. We're working with the other units right now on that.
Got it. And do we know how many total holidays that puts us at as a city each year?
I can count it up real fast. Or Angie, do you know? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I could have flagged this for you. It occurred to me sitting here.
She says 11.
11 total. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. I don't see any other hands raised from my colleagues. Crystal, is there any public comment on this item?
There are no hands raised on Zoom and no comment cards in person.
Okay. With that, I will see if there's anyone would like to make a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion. I move to adopt Resolution 2023-105, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos adopting a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, between the City of San Carlos and the American Local 856 Freight Checkers, Clerical Employees, and Helpers Union, International Brotherhood of Teamsters Unit, for the period of September 1st, 2023 through August 31st, 2026.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Crystal, you have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll, please?
Okay, Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Venkatesh?
Yes.
And Mayor Rec.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, moving on to item 10B. Consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing an additional appropriation of $445,000 in fiscal year 23-24 from the General Capital Fund 25, unassigned fund balance to the project C2105 Downtown Planning Initiative, authorizing the city manager to execute professional services agreement with WRT LLC in the amount of $768,781 and with W-Trans in the amount of $118,690 and authorizing an expenditure of contingency up to the revised project budget. Al Savay.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. The item before you this evening is the authorization request to appropriate funds to execute this professional services agreement with WRT and W-Trans to complete the downtown specific plan. And I'll be sharing this presentation with James Stickley, principal of WRT, and I'll be handing it over to him following my remarks. I'd like to make a few other introductions before I complete my comments this evening. And we also have Mark Spencer, principal in charge of W-Trans, our traffic and parking engineer, and he's available on Zoom. We also have Poonam Narkar, project manager and senior urban designer with WRT. We have David Shiver with Bay Area Economics, and of course, Lisa Porras, our planning manager, to answer additional questions. For any big project like this, selecting a consultant partner is a competitive process. And we interviewed the top 3 firms, and all were highly qualified. And it really comes down to who is the right fit. Each of these consultants brings a team of other specialized consultants in the areas of such as traffic engineering, environmental, parking, economics. As you know, we've pivoted from our initial consultant to get the project moving forward. And WRT was in the top of our group of interviews when we did those interviews. They're highly qualified, and they put together a strong team, and fortunately, they're available to help us move forward. State law requires that cities complete certain steps in preparation of a specific plan, and many of these steps you see here are required, but also very important in terms of making the plan a genuine community plan with a vision and with robust community engagement. And much like our general plan, these documents are intended to be long-term documents, sometimes up to 20 years. In general, specific plans are more policy-based documents, and with some, usually they have some development standards and zoning in them, and they include illustrations to show the intent of the plan. But based on our work so far, it's become clear that there is a sense of excitement and a desire to prepare a plan that can actually get built. Not only that, but a plan that can be acted upon with brevity and purpose. So we have proposed a couple of new work items that are different from the last time you saw the scope. And one of them is this streetscape master plan, and this is a new task recommended as part of the work of this scope. This plan would make the specific plan and take it to the next level, from a policy document to a roadmap for construction. And it will be a platform for the DTAC, the Planning Commission, the City Council, and the community to make real choices about the character of downtown and the look and feel of downtown. And it would include things like the selection of street trees and landscaping and lighting, paving, furnishings, and other things. And it will allow our community to take an active role in making a sense of place. So it gets more fine-grained than your typical specific plan. And these choices that you would be making in this plan would be the things that you would see walking down the street, walking down Laurel Street or San Carlos Avenue every day. The infrastructure development plan will make sure that we know what apparatus we need to make the plan come to life. It's like the roots of a tree. So we also have a number of optional items and contingency items here, and this would provide the Council, DTAC, Planning Commission with the flexibility to respond to unforeseen needs for new information or areas that you want to explore further beyond the scope. And this would augment the work that we have planned. And you can see the potential uses of the contingency here, and we're available to talk about these things. Now, the next two slides show the detailed project scope. And due to the complexity of work as well as the need for robust community engagement, there are a good number of meetings and touch points along the way. And for the initial plan scope that Council approved, we had assumed 24 months to complete it. This plan to complete the scope would be about 15 to 18 months. When we left off, we had completed about a year's worth of work, and from an overall perspective, this would add about 6 months. However, if you look at the calendar timeline, the original scope goes, or this scope goes to February of 2025. Of these tasks, the Streetscape Master Plan and the Infrastructure Development and Services Plan will take several months to complete. And these plans would enable the city to hit the ground running once you complete your specific plan. These plans would enable you to begin work on construction drawings shortly after the plan is completed. And so that would be much quicker than you would have with a basic specific plan as well. Then we get, after that, once we get done with that and start on the construction drawings and things, you can focus on project phasing and funding. And so here's a snapshot of the budget. The Community Development Department applied for a Metropolitan Transportation Commission grant, and the city was awarded $300,000 in funding for the preparation of the downtown plan. With the remaining budget and with the contingency, you see the total at the bottom of the table there. And what I'm going to do now is hand over the presentation to James and then come back up for the recommendation and to field questions. James? And here it is right there. Let's go.
Great. Thank you, Al. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, my name is Jim Stickley. I'm principal with WRT based in San Francisco. And a little bit about our firm. We're about 60 years old, so we were started in 1963. It's actually our 60th anniversary this year. We're an integrated interdisciplinary practice of planners, urban designers, landscape architects, and architects. And in San Francisco, we cover planning, urban design, and landscape architecture, and we specialize in the kinds of projects that you're undertaking here in San Carlos. We have 4 areas of focus in our firm, the largest of which is community design, which is projects of the nature of the downtown specific plan. Next slide. Oh, that's me. So this is our team. Myself, Poonam Narkar, who will be our project manager, senior urban designer and engagement lead, and she is on the line on the Zoom call this evening. Matt Tacker, senior urban designer. And there are others that are a part of the San Carlos specific plan team that will be involved within our office in San Francisco. And then we're pleased to have David Shiver and David Greensfelder as part of the economics team. We work in a very integrated way with economists on projects like this, and they are both firms that we have worked with on other projects, so we have a great deal of respect for both of them. And then we're very pleased that Brian Canepa and Mark Spencer have already been involved with the project. They were actually part of our original team when we proposed a year ago, so we think that's going to be a very seamless way for us to flow in and utilize the work that they've done to date. And then Robert Stevens, a very accomplished civil engineer that we work with on many projects with CSW ST2, and then Carly Kaufman with Rincon Consulting for the EIR work. So that's our team. And just some of our recent work that I think has applicability to the downtown specific plan. We have recently adopted the Millbrae Downtown and El Camino Real specific plan, which is really looking at, this is a PDA, so it's a priority area for placing density around transit. So that was a high priority to figure out how to integrate housing and additional office into the downtown area. And then it focused on 2 corridors, similar to San Carlos. El Camino Real runs through Millbrae, and Broadway is their downtown Main Street, really their destination for shopping and dining. So very similar parallels here to El Camino Real and Laurel Street. This project did involve a streetscape master plan for both El Camino Real and Broadway. So as Al explained, that allowed us to take everything to a next level of specificity in terms of the materiality of the streetscape, the greening strategies, specifics about the pedestrian environment and bicycle facilities, transit facilities, and so forth. So Millbrae is equipped to take that, and in fact, they already have issued at least one RFP to go ahead and do detailed design and implementation on a piece of the El Camino Real corridor. And then Castro Valley Boulevard is a project we did several years ago, which started as a redevelopment strategic plan to sort of transform a state route that ran through the unincorporated city of Castro Valley, and really transform it into their central downtown Main Street destination, which they didn't really have before. And so there was an investment in the strategic plan, but also the initial phase of the streetscape design for Castro Valley Boulevard, which we also did. It was implemented, and it has had a profound effect now on the evolution of that downtown as a community center. And this photograph here, which Al had also included in his presentation, is actually a private initiative that happened after the public investment in the boulevard itself. And this is exactly what we love to see happen in communities when the private dollars start following the public investment and creating places like this, which was all done by the developer of this food hall. He adopted the alley next to the food hall and turned it into this really great destination for the community. And then literally this morning, we just pressed send on the downtown Santa Clara precise plan for the final draft for adoption. We've been working on this through COVID. It had fits and starts because of COVID difficulties, but Santa Clara, if you know anything about it, lost their downtown when it was demolished in the 1960s to build a mall, and then the mall was never built. So this is a master plan to recreate their downtown, including a main downtown square, a recreation of their historic theater. And a lot of this plan is about not only placing the mixed uses that will bring the population and the critical mass to downtown, but also to create the activation that is created with ground floor uses and public space and how the two of those interact with each other. So I think those will be also critical items in the San Carlos downtown plan. And that completes my presentation. I'm going to hand it back to Al.
Thank you, James. And that concludes our presentation for this evening. The recommendation is to adopt the resolution authorizing the appropriation of the money to complete this plan. And we are available, our team is available, the consultants team is available to answer questions of the mayor and council. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Jim. Do any of the council members have any questions? Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Al. And thank you, Jim, for being here tonight. One question, and then I'll just make a comment. There's a part in the packet about a stakeholder 3-day session in a vacant storefront downtown, and I thought that was really innovative and interesting to kind of bring people in. I assume you'll have a bunch of posters up where people can write. I guess my only concern is that one of the things I personally have found is that people are so busy, and it is really hard to get people to show up in person. And I think that for our other plans, doing these online workshops that we've been doing, we have one coming up for the Northeast area, has been, I've heard a lot of positive feedback, and they've been very well attended. So I'm just kind of wondering if there's a plan to kind of do both, and how that would look. Thank you.
Yeah, we need to find the right balance for sure. We really learned a lot of great online techniques during COVID because we had to, and we certainly have those tools in our toolbox. I think people are coming out of COVID. People want to get out. They want to engage. But the problem, as you correctly stated, is that people are busy, and it's sometimes hard to get the numbers of people out that we need to get the proper level of feedback. So we want to find the right balance. One of the scope items in our scope is to actually write an engagement plan. We took a first shot at sort of structuring this multi-day event based on what we know, but I think once we get started with the project, we're going to want to really sit down with Al and Lisa and their team and just hammer this out. What exactly is going to work? What is going to bring people? How much of this should be online? For the 3-day event, there actually is an online component that goes with that. And so we would sort of advertise it in that way. I think we did a similar thing in Millbrae with the storefront, and I think what made that work is we had discrete invited events in the early evening for, I think, 2 of the 3 nights that we were able to get people to come and really participate in some programmed exercises. And then the storefront was open during other hours. People could come through at their leisure. They could look at the materials on the walls. They could talk to our team, and they could give their input. But having that combination of scheduled events and more informal, just walk through when you can, seem to work there. But we want to revisit that when we write the engagement plan and make sure we get the right balance.
Okay, understood. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then my other comment was I saw an option to do a simulated traffic video, and I thought that was really a great. Sometimes it's helpful to see actually how the traffic flows, and so I appreciated that option, and I'd be very interested in moving forward with that if that's, if that comes up later.
So would we. It's a really cool firm from Milan. We've worked on one project with them out of our Philadelphia office. They're really creative, and they produce these really interesting simulations that what we think is the value is that they really engage the community and the stakeholder, because people can really relate to what they're seeing. So, we have to see what the priority is of other things that are optional services, but that would certainly be have value if that's the way that we decide to go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember McDowell. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate the presentation. Since James is here, I will ask my question of him first, which is, in all these good examples, looks like good stuff. This is obviously a big, exciting project for San Carlos. So I guess my question would be, our project, our specific plan involves a street closure as well for a couple blocks, and I don't see an example of that. I'm just curious how will your firm grapple with the unique components of that?
I think, first of all, meeting you where you are as a community, you've made some important decisions about the 600 block and closing it. I think we do want to get back into that decision, not to question it, but to revisit and make sure everybody's thinking of all the parameters. We want to simulate how pedestrian flows and bicycle flows are going to go through that, how cars flow around that block, how people are going to find parking and so forth, just as a way to make sure all the support structure is there to make that really work. And then I think the design of the block itself, just the pavement design, the curbless nature, how lighting and site furnishings work, are going to have a big impact on its function as well, and we'll be able to get into a good amount of detail for that. So yeah, I think just proceed carefully, make sure people are fully understanding what is going to happen, how that's going to look and feel, and how that's going to work, and then just proceed from there into the more detailed iterations.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My only comment would be it has been closed for 2 years, so in that sense it has been working, but fair enough. Al, a question for you, if I could. And I haven't been in these subcommittee meetings. Can I just get the Nichols summary of what happened with RRM, and what was our sunk cost with those guys, and did we get any return on that?
Yeah, it was, I think it was about $450,000 or so, and Lisa can correct me on that later, but yeah, I think we got value out of that. We got so far into the plan. One of the milestones that Lisa and I were interested in getting to is the decision on the 700 block. And that serves as a very important starting point for the discussion moving forward. So it took a while to get there. As I mentioned in my presentation, it's about the right fit. It wasn't the right fit, and moving forward, we felt that this was critical to move in a different direction.
Okay, and just what specifically, the team wasn't a fit, or they had ideas that weren't consistent with our planning, or?
I think from my standpoint and staff standpoint, I think it's just a good fit is the explanation, but if you have any other questions, we can handle that offline.
Okay, fair enough. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Venkatesh.
Just so we save on some emails tomorrow, it's a 700 block that's closed.
Yeah, 700. If I said something different, I apologize. Oh, you did? Okay.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Councilmember Khan, did you have something, or you had your hand up and then you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I did, but Pranita asked the question I was going to ask, because we both looked at each other when Jim mentioned the 600 block, and I thought, uh-oh, we're going to have some people on 600 block. Won't be very happy, but the only other comment I wanted to make just for John is that Pranita and I are on the subcommittee, and when we talked to staff, we were convinced that continuing on with RRM really wasn't the best way to go, that this was a better decision.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, I had a couple questions, and then I guess, so one, I guess, I just want to get clarification, I think, from both of you, because what I heard Jim say is we want to make sure we're doing the right thing on stuff, but I feel like this council has been pretty clear that we're not interested in opening up that 700 block. So I would not want to look at that at all. I think we've looked at that enough times, so I just want to clarify that that is not on the table.
Clear to me.
Thank you.
It's clear to me we want to make it work really well. And so I think it's more about how do we take that to the next level of design so that it functions in the way that you all intended when you made that decision.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then second, I guess I understand you need to make changes and things, so I'd be kind of curious about sort of how much of what work was done previously can be sort of salvaged, can be used, because we are basically, looks like we're sort of an entire year on this, because originally the plan was to be finished around March of 2024, now you're pushing it to February 2025. So it's obviously frustrating. We've been, this has been an ongoing thing that we've been working on for a number of years. So can we not use any of the stuff that's been done already, any of the community feedback, anything to sort of accelerate it? Or I'd be curious on that.
Yes, we did a tremendous amount of work with the community in that year. I mean, the work that we did was very important work, and it was very insightful. The community really came out in support of this project in a very real way, and so all that information, and we had in-person meetings, lots of online. We had community meetings. The mayor, you spoke at a couple of those to open them up, and so all that information is very, very important, and it would be a big mistake if we didn't take that and move forward with it. I think for WRT, they need to look at all that stuff and we need to catch them up. We haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. It does take a little bit of uptake. We did look at the schedule, and we're as concerned as you are. And there's a number of different ways to look at the schedule and to look for ways to speed things up. One of the things that we did to speed things up and compress it was this 3-day idea that we just spoke about. That's one way that we can kind of compress the engagement component of it, and we'll explore that further. Another item that kind of pushes the overall timeline out is this streetscape master plan and the infrastructure plan. We think that it's best to leave it in as part of the plan as opposed to doing it after you adopt your specific plan. And one of the reasons for that is because you can have both conversations at the same time. The character, the placemaking, the look and feel of downtown can inform some of the policy decisions in the specific plan. So we will be gathering those two things and talking to the community about both at the same time. So while overall, from a calendar perspective, it does take longer to do it that way. On the back end, as I mentioned, we'll be able to move forward with acting on that plan much faster than if we didn't do those two things. You could take those out. So you could take, and there are several months, I think 5 or more months just to do those two things. So we could take that out and kind of compress it back, but that's not what we're recommending because we really do believe those two things go together very nicely.
Okay, thank you for that explanation and clarification. I don't have any other questions. I don't see any from my colleagues. Why don't we go to public comment then, Crystal?
We have one hand up on Zoom from Solomon Liu.
Okay.
Hi, council members. Thank you for your comments and especially for really being adamant and making it clear that the 700 block closure is not negotiable. Yeah, so I really appreciate that. The council is really clear on that. I really enjoyed the closure, and I think I've been to a couple of the community engagement meetings that were held last year over Zoom. So I support Councilmember McDowell's comment that the virtual events really helped everyone find the time to be involved. I'm curious, what sort of experience WRT and WTrans have for planning and really considering more multimodal transportation, specifically, making pedestrian crossing safer, building more bike lanes. And if El Camino Real is, in the scope, then potentially, making the bus loading area, potentially having like a bus lane, dedicated bus lane, something like that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon. Let's see. Actually, Jim, I'd like to hear that. Hear some feedback on that question.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the question. Making pedestrian-oriented corridors is a big part of our practice. So we're working on a lot of these types of projects throughout California, the Bay Area, Sacramento area. So we're very familiar, very experienced in these decisions that it gets down to feet and inches in terms of how do you shift behavior, travel modes from vehicular to pedestrian to bike. What are the design strategies you need to do to make those things happen? And I think Mark Spencer should comment as well. WTrans has a lot of great experience in this area as well. But I think part of what we do in our work is to test and communicate the proposed changes to the community so they can see how things work. So if we rebalance El Camino Real, what does that mean? How do the bike lanes work? How do the transit stops work? How are we increasing safety? And how are we bringing beauty in terms of greening strategies? All those things. What does that look like? What does it feel like? So communicating that during the process so people have the information they need to make those decisions. Mark, if you're out there, do you want to add any comments to that?
Yeah. Thank you, Jim, and thanks for the question. Part of our scope includes a multimodal analysis. And when Jim and I and Al and others have been scoping this, we've been talking about flow maps. How will we shift people from out of their cars to walking, to bicycling, to active transportation, to transit? Study boundary on the eastern edge is El Camino. And we've been working on several initiatives and projects in San Carlos that include how do we promote, how do we encourage, how do we incentivize multimodal transportation? So in order to have a vibrant downtown, that's all part of it. San Carlos is blessed by the fact that there's residential so close to downtown. It's a way to not just attract the people who are right next door, though, but how can we make it viable and attractive to people coming from other parts of the city, other parts of the county, and the region? So that's all part and parcel of our scope. I'll also say we're looking at different concepts within downtown, and we are assuming that the 700 block of Laurel, the closure of that is a given, but we also have options to look at what happens if you did close the 600 block. What would happen if we have some road diets on San Carlos and elsewhere, expanding sidewalks, expanding and connecting the pedestrian and bike infrastructure, bringing in the bike and pedestrian master plans and that part of the connectivity and bringing that through? How does that get implemented through the downtown area? So all of this is included in what we're doing. So it's going to be exciting for us because it's a nice challenge, and this is a large part of what we want to do and ways for us to help the community. So we appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Great, thank you, Mark. Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to add a note of endorsement of W-Trans. When I was on the Four Corners Committee, which was working on the traffic solutions around Carlmont High School and Tierra Linda, we worked with W-Trans for 3 or 4 years, I believe, and they came up with many, many different options. I thought their work was just first rate and imaginative around, traffic management and traffic circles, that sort of thing. So I expect they'll continue very good work for us.
Thank you, Councilmember Collins. Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a brief comment that I echo the mayor's comments about the length that this is taking. And I know that some of this is out of our control, right? And we have to pivot and we have to, find the best fit. But I would really like that February 2025 date to be a very firm deadline. I feel like there is, the number one question I receive from people in the public or residents is, what's going on with the downtown and why is it taking so long? And it's getting harder for me to answer that question. And secondly, I would just like to encourage everyone to be creative. I appreciated the photos that are included in this presentation, but I'm looking for a lot more creativity than, some pretty bricks or, there's so many beautiful street closures. I spent time in Ithaca this summer. I spent time in Charlottesville, Virginia this summer. There's water features and public art and really beautiful ways to make your downtown a destination and an experience. Not just, it's not just about the road, right? It's about making that experience. And so I'm hoping that as part of this process, we can be creative, but also not overwhelming our community with 100 different options, because at this point, I think people are ready to choose and move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McDowell. Crystal, is there any, we didn't kind of finish if there's other public comment. No, you're okay. We just kind of jumped around a little bit.
There were no further hands.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. With that, let's come back here. Are there any final comments from the council? And if not, I will call for a motion.
Go ahead.
All yours.
I just wanted to echo Mrs. Sarah's comments and say it would be nice to have some culture in downtown, and Ron and I are on that subcommittee, and it'd be nice to see some children work also included in the downtown. But I will make the motion. I move to adopt Resolution 2023-106, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos authorizing an additional appropriation of $445,000 in fiscal year 2023-24 for the General Capital Fund 0025, unassigned fund balance to project C2105, Downtown Planning Initiative, authorizing the city manager to execute professional services agreement with WRT LLC in the amount of $768,781, with the W-Trans in the amount of $118,690, and authorizing an expenditure of the contingency up to the revised project budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Crystal, can you call the roll?
Councilmember Venkatesh?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
And Mayor Rack?
Yes. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to 10C, consideration of adopting a resolution providing authority to the city manager to administer a program allowing for the temporary closure of the 700 block of Laurel Street for special events and other time-limited purposes, extending the temporary downtown parklet program and providing for expiration of both programs on September 15th, 2024.
Mayor and members of the City Council, I'll be presenting this item tonight. By way of background, the council and citizens will recall that the parklet program and temporary closure of the 700 block of Laurel Street was approved for the first time in June of 2020 in response to the COVID-19 emergency and to support restaurants and businesses and to promote safe social distancing. Parking for this block on the 700 block is available on the 600 and 800 blocks of Laurel and in the city parking lots at Clark, Williams, Wheeler, and South Plaza. Many businesses took advantage of the temporary closure to expand outdoor seating areas and to establish parklets granted through revocable encroachment permits. The program was last extended in March of 2022, and both the temporary closure and the parklet program will expire on September 15, 2023, if not extended. Also in March of 2022, the council established a downtown specific plan subcommittee to begin study of the future of downtown and Laurel Street, and an 18-member downtown citizen advisory committee was appointed by the city council. City staff has made a number of outreach efforts to the community, some of which were mentioned in the earlier item tonight, but there was a February 15th 2023 community workshop, and there was a coffee and comments open house on March 4th. An online survey was conducted from March 1st to April 30th, 2023, and this led to some conceptual urban design concepts which were considered and reviewed at the April 17th Planning and Transportation Commission, and then later by the City Council at its April 24th, 2023 meeting. And then there was a staff downtown business stakeholder meeting on May 24th, 2023 with the downtown business community. The outreach efforts have resulted in the council consideration of initiating the process for establishing a pedestrian mall under the pedestrian mall law. That will be considered as a separate agenda item tonight. If the proposed resolution is approved, the city manager or his designee will have authority to manage temporary closures as provided in the vehicle code, and needed modifications would not require further council action until the proposed pedestrian mall law is completed. So this is a short text of the resolution for consideration by the council. Again, the extension of the temporary closure of the 700 block and the parklet program would, if approved, would expire on September 15th, 2024. And so that's the end of my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. Do we have any questions from the council for the city attorney? Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Greg, for the presentation. Could you go back a couple slides to that where you have the two bullets? Yes. So the second one, could you go into a little more detail about giving the city manager authority to manage the closures, and does that include giving the city manager authority to open the street, the closed portion of the street?
Yeah, this is, the vehicle code allows for a delegation of the authority over temporary closures to a, quote, public official. In this case, the resolution suggests the city manager be that public official. So the city manager would have the authority to manage temporary closures, and that could include reopening of the street if it was necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember McDowell. I did have one question. In terms of if, we're thinking about sort of the pedestrian mall law and kind of the timing of the street closure, do we feel like we're giving a sufficient enough time by extending it to September 15, 2024? Because I don't want to just I feel like we keep going back over and over to do this. I would like to do it one more time, be done, and try to push this final thing over.
Well, we considered the date in light of a number of factors. The law that we're relying on allows for temporary closures, and so it was my recommendation that we not extend it too long to keep it in the realm of temporary. The second thing is under the mall law that you'll be considering later, the timeline is fairly accelerated. We have it would require a hearing within 90 days on November 27th, the date that you're going to be consider setting that hearing, and then assuming that does not result in a majority protest, then the council would also at that meeting consider an ordinance that would establish the rules and regulations for the pedestrian mall. That would be the first reading of that ordinance. And then the second reading of that ordinance would take place in January. And so 30 days from that day, the pedestrian mall will be established. So it could be fairly early if all things work out. Now, I'll be able to explain that in the next agenda item, some of the other issues that could impact that timeline.
Okay, I just want to be clear. So it sounds like, based on kind of the direction we're proceeding, we've given ourselves sufficient time to move forward.
Yeah, I believe that's the case.
Okay. I see Councilmember Venkatesh would like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you just give me an example of a reason for reopening it?
Well, I think it would be up to, on a case-by-case basis by the city manager. The law allows that flexibility, so it requires some flexibility, but that would be up to the city manager, and I'm sure that if he had any question about it, there would be an opportunity to come back to the council.
Vice Mayor Dugan. Oh, Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Greg, for that clarification. But this represents no change. I mean, we've already made this delegation, right? This is just a continuation of our current delegation of the city manager.
Well, that's partially accurate because under the Parklet program, there's already a delegation to the city manager and city staff, but on the street closure, there has not yet been a delegation, so we're kind of making them both consistent in that sense.
I see. And what was the motivation for that?
Well, I mean, I think it was to, again, provide some flexibility to address changed circumstances, as I mentioned in the staff report. And, again, it's not like something, this is only a delegation. It does not usurp your authority to take other action.
I understand. I guess I am a little surprised we're making a change after, 2 years, but fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. Are there other questions at this point? I guess I would ask, Greg, I had a question for you. So if we did want to modify this sort of delegation of authority, could we do something to just say if it's opening up the street, then it would have to require council approval? If it's minor modifications or something, that we could we split that somehow and do that?
That is totally within your discretion as a city council.
Thank you. Okay. I don't see any further questions to that. All right. Crystal, is there any public comment on this item?
There are no speaker slips for in-person, and there are no hands up on Zoom.
Okay. Sorry, put that up. All right. Turning back here, I see Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment. I appreciate all the explanations about the delegation of authority, but personally, I'm not comfortable handing off authority for the street closure to the city manager. I think it's really important that we are transparent with the public in this entire process, and I think that any changes to the street closure program should be done in a public meeting, and I think that that decision should be made by the council. So I have no problem with having additional meetings if changes need to be made, but I think for transparency to the public, and given that the council has been really driving this street closure, I think that we should retain that authority. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given Sarah's comment, I think it's important that we find out from the city manager what he would do in the event that it appeared that it might be necessary to reopen the street.
I feel like that's a tough question for me to answer here tonight. This is not my recommendation, and it flows from a confidential memo that your city attorney sent the council last week or the week before. So I'm a little bit unsure what to say right now so as not to put the city in a difficult situation that we're trying to avoid here.
Well, maybe I could clarify my question. If it, whatever that hypothetical circumstance would be, that would put you in a position where you had to reopen it, would you come to the council?
Oh, absolutely. For sure, the council would be, I would imagine, in the loop before, within minutes of me being in the loop. This wouldn't be something that would be generated by me. It would be in reaction to external forces.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought, and so I'm not sure what the real concern is. I mean. Sarah, maybe you can help me with that.
Vice Mayor Dugan has his hand up first, so let me do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the resolution as it is. I mean, I think it's pretty clear what council's intent is, and even if the city manager went against that intent for a reason we couldn't conceive of, I'm also confident either Jeff or Jeff's replacement could maintain the closure. So the legal memo we received, I suppose there's good reason for this, so I support what's proposed here this evening.
Okay. Any other comments on this? And then I guess, so I'm just wondering, could we put in writing that you have to consult the city council as part of it? I mean, I assume we could do anything we want on that stuff.
That is completely okay with me. As I said, I mean, we would absolutely be consulting, and you would be in the loop. I would assume closed sessions would be being scheduled.
Well, and also the mayor could call a special meeting and agendize the subject once facts came to light that required that.
Okay. Councilmember McDowell.
I guess I'm just confused then about why this authorization is necessary. If we're talking about having a meeting anyway and the council deciding anyway, then why don't we just keep it as is? I don't understand the need to delegate this authority. If it's worked fine for the last 3 years the way it is, and and we're going to have all these meetings anyway, and we're going to put in language that you have to run it by the council, then just don't delegate the authority. I don't understand. It seems like we're overcomplicating things by giving authority, but then all of these extra, steps.
Well, I mean, I think I understand the question, and the way I see the question is that there is the delegation of authority to provide some flexibility to manage the program due to changed circumstances versus the council's prerogative to actually override that decision or sentiment. or proposal, whatever it is at the time. So I think if you, like I said before, if the council feels like they're not prepared to make that delegation now, then it would be the way it is now, and the council would have to make a decision on any changes to the program. And if there's a delegation, then you will have given the city manager power to respond to changed in circumstances. And if he needed to, he would have the authority to reopen the street under the parameters that he decides to set, because the resolution's designed that it's a program that he would manage based upon the delegation.
Okay, so Councilmember McDowell, if you wanted to make a motion, I would be happy to support your motion. If you would prefer to go a different route, I'm happy to entertain other ideas.
That's fine. Let me just find the motion.
And I mean, whatever you'd like to propose on that.
Oh, well, I would make the proposal.
If you want to make the changes, I'm happy to support that.
Okay, so my proposal would be that we extend the street closure till September 15th, 2024, and we just take out the providing authority to the city manager to administer the program. I think that what the comments I've heard is that we all still want to be involved and make that decision. And I don't think the public would want that decision to be made at the staff level without having a public meeting. So I think that it should reside with the council as it has. And I would just make the motion that we extend both programs until September 15th, 2024.
Okay. I'm happy to second that if nobody else wants to.
I just have a quick question, Mr. Mayor. Greg, would that in any way usurp the city manager's emergency powers if something had to happen, in a very short period of time before we could convene?
Well, I think it would. I mean, because the council is retaining the authority over the temporary closure based upon the motion. Now, if the city manager declared an emergency, I suppose that's a hypothetical, but I don't think that's very likely.
Right, but if he did declare an emergency, he would have full power to open, close, or whatever has to happen in the moment, correct?
With that, but the findings for an emergency would have to be made. But in that hypothetical, yes.
Okay, great. That's all I have.
So there's a motion and a second.
Do I need to make the actual motion though with the
sure.
numbers and stuff? Okay.
Go for it. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt Resolution 2023-107, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos, allowing for the temporary closure of the 700 block of Laurel Street for special events and other time-limited purposes, extending the temporary downtown parklet program, and providing the expiration of both programs on September 15th, 2024.
I'll second.
Sorry, I forgot my job for a second. We have a motion and a second. Crystal, will you call the roll?
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Venkatesh?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
And Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will prepare a revised resolution consistent with the motion.
Oh, thank you, Greg. All right, now we're moving on to item 10D, consideration of adopting a resolution of intent for the closure of the 700 block of Laurel Street between Cherry and Olive Streets to vehicular traffic under the Pedestrian Mall Law of 1960. Stephen Machida.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council Member Stephen Machida, Public Works Director. So just a real quick background. Basically, as referenced by City Attorney, in April 2024, or excuse me, in April 24th, 2023, at the City Council meeting, the Council wanted to initiate the process to establish a pedestrian mall on the 700 block of Laurel Street between Cherries and Olive, while maintaining through traffic on these same streets. To adhere to council's direction, we actually modified the Exhibit A in your resolution packet today to indicate the full street closures, and I'll show that diagram to you later on in this presentation. But what's before you tonight is the first step to establish a pedestrian mall as outlined in the state's pedestrian mall law of 1960. So some of the specifics is the vehicular traffic will be prohibited on the proposed pedestrian mall, except for emergency vehicles or utility maintenance service vehicles, which will have access at all times. Garbage vehicles, however, will be allowed access only between the hours of 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. The types of improvements that we use to close the streets may include, planters, bollards, barriers, or gates that will limit access traffic through the pedestrian mall. So if the council adopts the resolution this evening, a duly noticed public hearing is scheduled for November 27th, at which time the city will receive protests and objections on the proposed establishment of the pedestrian mall. Additionally, it is the requirement that we also send letters to the owners as well owners, but we also intend to send the same letters to the tenants along the 700 block, just to inform them of this public hearing in regards to creating the 700 block as a pedestrian mall. So any objections and protests that would be submitted must be submitted to the city clerk no later than 7 p.m. on November 27, 2023. Again, I just wanted to kind of go over, this is the exhibit in your actual packet. As you can see, it stops short of Olive Street. This is to your right of the diagram. So what staff is recommending is this modified Exhibit A, which include all of the 700 block from Cherry Street to Olive, including that portion that we left out earlier. So with that, I will take any questions that the City Council may have.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I see Councilmember Collins first, and then Vice Mayor Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Stephen. There's a statement in the staff report that says, at the November 27, 2023 public hearing, the abutting property owners and tenants may submit their objections, file legal claims for damages, and seek compensation if they believe that the street closure will cause harm of their property. If the majority of the property owners abutting the closure submit written objections, the city cannot move forward with the street closure. Now, given your presentation, I assume that to be property owners in the 700 block only. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so the 600 and 800 property owners are not involved in that decision?
That is correct.
Okay, so just 700 block. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Stephen, for the overview. And I'm just going to comment that I'm glad to see this planning extending all the way to Olive Street for the entire block. I was going to have that comment this evening, and just in general, all our thinking here needs to foresee that single-story, bank on a large lot might well turn into a higher density development at some point, especially under our recent zoning updates, and entirely foreseeable that that entire block would be desirable to be a pedestrian mall. So really glad to see that. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Stephen, for walking us through this process. Can you talk a little bit about how the public is going to be informed of this process as it moves forward? And will the protests be posted on our website where people can see which businesses are protesting, and how is this going to be public information?
So initially, what our intention is, if in fact the council does adopt the resolute intent, actually tomorrow we have to assemble our team to actually physically post the resolution as well as the diagram on the 700 block, as well as on the Cherry and Olive Street as you head towards Laurel Street. Additionally, as I mentioned, letters will be actually sent to all the the owners as well as the tenants on the 700 block. And we will also be posting the same information on our city website to kind of let people know that what is actually going to be happening. Just as a side, we will be actually checking these notices that are posted on site pretty much daily, Monday through Friday, certainly, and then on Sunday when we actually set up for farmers market. So, just ensure that these postings actually kind of remain in place and people have ample opportunity to review whatever we have posted.
And will the letters that businesses send in, the protests, will those be public? And where will the public be able to read those?
They will be part of the staff report, assuming that, we get them in on time for the information that we received in time, or the city clerks received it in time for the staff report. We can actually, what my thought is perhaps actually form a website where we actually kind of keep the public informed of, the process of what the city council wants to do or wishes to do with a public mall.
I think the one way to answer your question is that the protests would be our public records, and they are, if anyone asks the city for copies of any protests we see from the property owners, and I think there must be a way for us to be able to post that, but on our website, so there might be a list of, for example, a list of any protests that we've received. So I think that's the best way to handle that.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, Greg. I mean, we have a beautiful downtown website already for our planning effort, and I think that the public has a right to know which property owners are protesting, especially if in the small chance that a majority of property owners protest, we can't go forward with the closure. And I think that the public has a right to know. And so I think that we should be posting that on our downtown website. And I would look forward to my colleagues' comments on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McDowell. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Stephen, just a quick follow-up. So the full closure to Olive is, certainly where I think our planning needs to be. But obviously, do we need to take any action tonight to memorialize, the exception we've made with regard to the bank traffic flow there? Because we're not looking to actually close that at this time. We just want, kind of make sure the zone of planning includes that. But I believe we all believe that the current exception on the ground should maintain. And given that, I assume you're planning some direct outreach to that owner, because they'll obviously be concerned when they see this posted notice.
So your action tonight is actually to adopt the resolution intent, and this really is to inform the public of what your intention that you're looking into investigating establishing a pedestrian mall. To your point is, definitely we will have to contact the owner, property owner of that one bank, just to kind of ensure that they fully understand what the intentions are, but they will continue to have access or exit from their property at all times.
Got it. So you have the authority to maintain the exception, and that's on the ground now. We don't have to do anything formally around that this evening?
No, not this evening.
I'm sorry, Stephen, just not tonight, but it's something that probably would need to be in the ordinance that you pass that dictates the access to the mall.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure we handle that well and we don't unnecessarily upset a property owner there. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Dugan. Councilmember Venkatesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. If there are protests, the public hearing would be on November 27th, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it would actually happen. You will have a hearing, and whether or not we receive any protests, we'll find out before that date.
Okay. Are you all set? Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, maybe this was asked, but are all the business owners going to be notified that they have the opportunity to protest? Did somebody ask that?
It's not, the business owners are going to get notice.
They're going to get noticed.
But they don't have the protest right, only the property owners that are adjacent.
Only the property owners. So there certainly are a lot of tenants and not property.
We wanted to make sure that everyone on that area understands what
Right,
the
I did
council's
notice that
intending.
it was the owners. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you for indulging my last question, Mr. Mayor. I guess following up on the Vice Mayor's comment, I thought we were doing the street closure end to end. B of A is losing a driveway onto Laurel Street. There's another driveway further down that would be cut off. I thought that we would be studying the bank as well. I don't recall having a conversation of carving out the driveway of the bank and starting the street closure up that far. I thought what we were just, the street closure was end to end. Am I not remembering something? I don't know.
I don't recall the conversation on that, but we've had, it's sort of how it's been.
I recall that being the desire of the city council as well, with the recognition that that's a one-way in and out of that property right now, the way that that building is configured and the parking lot is configured, that I think we recognize that until and unless that property is redeveloped in the future, you're probably going to either have to work with that property owner specifically to address that problem somehow, and there are a couple of ways that that may occur, or you'll have to at least maintain like a lane back out to Olive from so it would be kind of like for that section right now that it's not closed during the temporary, it might be like half permanently closed and half kind of like a driveway. But there are options that we'll be able to look at, like maybe we don't need the sidewalk right there because we'll have the plaza just right there. So maybe we could move that driveway in a bit and create, larger plaza area. Or maybe there's something else that the property owner might be able to suggest that might help with that issue. So.
Thank you.
Sure, that's a good question. And I assume so, just to follow up on Councilmember McDowell's questions, that's something that we should inform that property owner as part of this process, right? That at some point, we want to look at this.
Yeah, we'll be having specific conversations with them.
Thank you. And Stephen, just on the notification for on Laurel and stuff, that's part of a requirement, right, through the Mall Act, more law, you have to provide that notification of what you were doing on the street. Is that, we're doing it as a means of compliance with the requirements?
Yes, that's required by the law specifically, that we need to post the resolution on the street that's subject to the closure, and we're going to, and it has to be every 300 feet, but we're going to have more frequent than 300 feet notices, and we are going to add the notices on Olive and Cherry Street, so people walking towards the mall will see it whatever direction they're coming from, or the proposed mall, excuse me.
Okay. I had just one follow-up on that, maybe just sort of, we've got up there right now the signs about not bike riding on the street. We have issues with bike riding in there, and I think I would love to see those signs get changed. I think they're sort of difficult to read. If that, maybe some more visuals that just have an X through a bike or something. But I just want to make sure we're sort of we're managing between, from a safety perspective, those signs, the no biking signs, all these kind of things. It sort of starts to clutter things up, and I want to make sure doesn't become an obstacle course for bikers, and it becomes sort of not safe for pedestrians at that point.
Right, so the intentions is actually to, include on these postings for the pedestrian mall, actually to be closer on towards the sidewalk. Okay. And just so essentially the roadway, if you will, kind of remains free and clear.
Okay, great. That's helpful to know. And then I do want to support Councilmember McDowell's suggestion that we have a website or something that people can post, but I would also like that the business, if any businesses respond, but I'd also like to see if we can take just general public comment on there as well. We may have residents who may want to comment, on this topic, given sort of the interest and the sort of what we hear from a lot of support for the streets. I think it'd be good to capture that as well, if possible. So, okay. I don't see any other questions right now. Does anyone have any questions? We can always do a final round once we take public comment. With that, I'll take public comment. Crystal, do we have any?
We don't have any speaker slips for in person, but we do have 2 hands up on Zoom.
Okay.
So first one up is Debbie Baldacci.
Good evening, Mayor Rack and members of the City Council. And with regard to this item, I'd just like to thank Councilmember McDowell for mentioning the council's role in approving things. To the extent that you can reserve the power to make these important decisions to the City Council versus delegating to staff, we'd really appreciate that. We elect all of you and you make decisions based on input from the community because we don't always have an opportunity to discuss with the city manager or staff what we'd like to see in San Carlos. So to the extent that you can reserve those decisions, the important decisions about this and other items, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. And then, next up is Sonia Elks.
Okay, Sonia, go ahead.
Sonia, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, sorry. Thank you for taking my call and for this robust discussion. We're very excited about a potential pedestrian mall downtown on the 700 block. Main comment, just on this is that I'd like to request a bike parking in front of, at the north end of the 700 block, in front of the Holly Hill, right there. Right now, there's something in front of the current US Bank there on that corner, the bank you're talking about with the one-way in front of it. But to send kids downtown on their bikes and then park them and not ride on the 700 block, it's much better to make a right turn into, down to come down Cherry and then turn right, then try to make that left from Olive into the downtown area, and then to navigate that one way. So if you could not necessarily move, but add an additional bike parking in front of the Holly Hill, just a bike rack, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Is there any other public comment, Crystal?
And nope, there are no more hands.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional comments or questions from council? Okay, if not, I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to adopt Resolution 2023-108, a resolution of the intent of the City Council of the City of San Carlos initiating a process for the closure of the 700 block of Laurel Street between Cherry and Olive Streets to vehicular traffic under the Pedestrian Mall Law of 1960.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Crystal, can you call the roll, please?
Okay, Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Venkatesh?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
And Mayor Rack?
Yes. Okay, the motion passes 5-0. It is 8:42. I think we've got one more main item. So I want to see if we can just take a 5-minute recess before we dig into it, if that's okay with everybody.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll do 5 minutes at 8:47. Item 11A, a public hearing, consideration of below actions for the Life Science Research and Development Project at 841 Old County Road, APN 046-133-160, 046-134-050, 046-134-060, 046-135-010, 046-135-020, 046-135-030, 046-135-040, 046-182-100, 046-182-110, and 046-182-150. The items below are adopt a resolution adopting the mitigated negative declaration and the associated mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Item 2, introduce an ordinance approving the 841 Old County Road project planned development plan and related zoning map amendment to rezone the project site from heavy industrial IH to planned development at 841 Old County with the same APN numbers. And 3, introduce an ordinance approving a development agreement with the Sobrato Family Foundation. Okay. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you for that very detailed introduction.
You bet.
Feels like half my presentation.
I'm sure you have more.
The subject site is located at the northeast corner of Commercial Street and Old County Road, with Branston located to the north of the site. The property is 3.41 acres in area and is improved with several commercial buildings. The site is zoned heavy industrial with a general plan designation of planned industrial. The site is also located within the recently studied East Side Innovation District Plan area. There's also 2 other development applications that the city's received and we're still reviewing. One to the south, the Alexandria proposed development at 987 Commercial, and to the north, the Minkoff proposed development at 789 Old County Road, which is the current CMEX site. The East Side Plan identifies the Commercial Street at Old County Road intersection as an activity node, and this is located directly across from the Caltrain undercrossing that connects to El Camino Real as well as downtown at Arroyo. So the request before you this evening is for 2 new research and development life science building with an underground parking structure as well as associated landscape improvements. The items before the City Council include the mitigated negative declaration, the planned development zoning and planned development plan, and the development agreement, as recommended by the Planning and Transportation Commission. At its June 7th meeting, the Planning and Transportation Commission approved the design review, the tentative parcel map that cleans up all of those assessor parcel numbers, grading and dirt haul, and a transportation demand management plan. And all of those approvals are subject to the effective date of the planned development zoning. And this is, you see the site plan. As I indicated, it's planned in 2 separate buildings, and the project architect can get into more details. But essentially, the northern building is located along Branston Road, is proposed at 4 stories. And the southern building, located along Old County at Commercial, is proposed at 5 stories. 2 levels of underground parking is located under the entire site. And an access lane is provided to the rear of the buildings, providing access to the loading docks, parking level, as well as fire access through the site, so that access lane would connect Commercial Street to Branston Road. The applicant also proposes a central landscape courtyard between the buildings. The front portion will be accessible to the public with a recorded covenant. And the applicant also proposes a publicly accessible cafe with an outdoor plaza located at the corner of Commercial Street at Old County Road. And the planned development zoning, as well as the planned development plan, establishes site-specific zoning requirements for this site. And that includes the height of the building. So the 4-story building would be at a height of 74 feet 6 inches to the roof line and 83 feet to the top of the mechanical screen. And the new 5-story building would be at a height of 90 feet 6 inches to the roof, 99 feet to the top of the mechanical screen, where the current underlying height limit is 50 feet. It also increases the floor area for this site to a 2.28 floor area ratio, which results in a total of 339,170 square feet for both buildings. Also requests a reduction in the exterior side yard setback on Commercial Street. The zoning requires a 5-foot setback, and this reduces it to 2 feet 6 inches. And that's required due to some widening and adjustments to the intersection of Commercial and Old County Road to ensure that we can get some truck turning radiuses at that location. And then the use, we would carry forward all of the uses that are allowed in the heavy industrial zoning district. So anything that's conditional or permitted would continue forward with this planned development. And then future tenants would be subject to the biosafety regulations that you adopted at your previous meeting. So as indicated, the Planning Commission did approve design review. And this is the view from the corner of Old County Road at Commercial Street. Here you see the 5-story building with the upper level step back and the lower height on Commercial Street. And the 4-story building is in the foreground to the north. You also see here that undercrossing that connects to El Camino Real as well as downtown. And this is the view of the publicly accessible courtyard between the 2 buildings. You also see the bridge connecting the 2 buildings, and that's located on the 3rd and 4th floors. Here's another rendering from El Camino Real. This is more of a bird's eye perspective. Obviously, you're hovering up high. The grayed out building to the right is the proposed Alexandria development. And then beyond in the foreground, you do see the existing 825, 835 Industrial Road project, previously known as Meridian 25. The proposed building is in scale with other recently approved buildings, as well as the building to the south, Alexandria, and north, Minkoff. Planning Commission also approved the grading and dirt hall certificate for the site grading of 121,000 cubic yards of soil, and that's for the 2 levels of below grade parking. The grading will occur to a depth of approximately 23 feet and will remove any contaminated soil. Planning and Transportation Commission also approved the Transportation Demand Management Plan, which anticipates at least a 20% reduction in trips based on the measures listed here. The effectiveness of that program is required to be monitored. The site is 0.3 of a mile walking distance to the train station. That's about a 6-minute walk or a 2-minute bike ride, and is directly adjacent to the Caltrain undercrossing to El Camino and Arroyo Street to the west. Planning and Transportation Commission also approved the tentative parcel map that emerges the 6 existing parcels to create one 3.41 acre parcel, with the finding that the site would have adequate vehicle, pedestrian, and fire access from public streets. The developer was very involved and attended the meetings and paid attention to our Eastside Innovation District Vision Plan and was able to modify their project to comply with the plan for all of these measures. So as indicated, we have that new discovery path along Branston Road, also implementing the Eastside Connect project, as well as bicycle and pedestrian master plan. That's along Old County Road. Activity hub with the new cafe proposed at the corner of Commercial Street and Old County Road. They're also improving the Old County Road and Commercial Street intersection in coordination with the Alexandria proposed development, providing publicly accessible plaza space and contribution towards community benefits. We now have Jim Simon from RSG will give an overview of the community benefits.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Jim Simon with RSG. Our community benefits analysis that was included in the information that you were provided starts with evaluating 2 alternatives to the project, what they can otherwise do by right, which is called the conforming alternative, as well as this application, which has a significantly additional density in terms of height and total building mass. In the methodology in which we go about doing that analysis, we first compare the cost of construction and the value of both projects, the conforming alternative to the project that they're proposing, and concluded that this project that they're bringing forward would, in fact, obviously generate not only a feasible project, but one that would generate additional profit. And that additional profit becomes the basis for your community benefit negotiations, which is what you've established here as your past practice in several projects, as well as the kind of prevailing view that's out there in most communities today of how this is done. And that amounted to about $7 million of total community benefits, but we'll go through what that entails. The second part then is to determine how is that $7 million to be spent. And so that starts off by looking at, in this case, where you were with the Eastside Vision Plan and identify community benefits that start from there. Those were the priorities that were established through consultations with the community. And those identified on this exhibit that you see. What we do not include in community benefits analysis or in the community benefits package are things that they would otherwise require to be done by code, which are 4 different fees that you have. This project alone would generate about $13 million of fees, affordable housing linkage fees, childcare fees, traffic fees, and the like. So the $7 million that I mentioned of community benefits is broken down on this schedule that you see in front of you today. That includes improvements for downtown of about $2.8 million, a community improvement recreation fund contribution of $3 million, green energy sustainability of $500,000, the credit for the cafe on the corner of about $555,000, and then a credit for the bike path, pedestrian path that they're constructing of about $148,000 to bring the total to $7 million. And that, as I mentioned, does not include the city impact fees, which are another $13 million here that you see before you today, bringing the total contributions between community benefits and impact fees to about $20 million.
And then I just wanted to describe a little bit more of the improvements that are included in the development agreement. So this is the discovery path along Branston Road, and this is in compliance with the East Side Implementation Plan. After meeting with the Greater East Side leads, the applicant actually modified this plan a little bit to move the tree inward closer to the building, and that way they can achieve a taller tree height than how it was previously proposed in the plan, is closer to the street. And that's mainly because of the angle for the fire department ladder access. And then the next item is the 1,300 square foot cafe that's located within the south building adjacent to Commercial Street and Old County Road. And that also includes a patio, pedestrian oriented, that's near that undercrossing to El Camino Real. And that is located at the activity hub that was identified in the Innovation District Plan. In compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, an initial study and mitigated negative declaration was prepared, determined that the project will not have an impact with implementation of mitigation measures relating to air quality, biological, cultural resources, geological hazard, and noise. The mitigated negative declaration was available for a 30-day public review period from January 23rd through February 21st. No comments were received during that review period. We did, however, receive one comment after the close of the comment period, and we had our CEQA consultant go ahead and respond to that, and that's included as an attachment to your CEQA resolution, the letter as well as the response. The mitigation monitoring and reporting plan is also included as an attachment to the CEQA resolution. So the comment received after the comment period, the resident expressed concern with water usage, displacement of groundwater, and the risk of flooding, energy use, hazardous materials, water quality, and discharge. As I indicated, our CEQA consultant reviewed that letter, prepared a memo responding to the comments, and concluded that no additional analysis is warranted, as well as no additional mitigation measures. A traffic study was also completed to evaluate the safety and any potential impacts to nearby intersections. The study did not find any impacts with the proposed development. The applicant will also be installing a pedestrian beacon at Branston and Old County Road. Public notice of this hearing was mailed to all property owners and occupants within 300 feet of the site, as well as published in the newspaper on August 17th. We have received, I believe, 2 comment letters expressing support for the project. And just before the meeting, I believe you also received an email expressing some concern with the project. Planning and Transportation Commission recommends that the City Council adopt the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting plan. Also, introduce the ordinance rezoning the site from planned development zoning and adopting the associated plan development plan, and adopt the ordinance approving the development agreement. The applicant also has a presentation for you this evening, and virtually we have the CEQA consultant, the traffic consultant, and Jim Simon is here to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. All right. Ron, did you make it? You didn't?
Oh, I did. Well, I apologize.
No worries. You're fine. Did you have a?
I do have a question.
We're going to have the applicant go first. Is that okay?
Wait,
okay.
wait, that's fine.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Jeff Sobrato, and I am the applicant for the office development in San Carlos's east side on behalf of our company, the Sobrato Organization. Our company has been both a highly respected real estate developer and also a nonprofit family philanthropy foundation that has been operating in the Bay Area communities and helping contribute to and shape Silicon Valley for over 70 years. The Sobrato Organization is still and will continue to be a family-owned and family-led business, and I am now the 4th generation to be involved with it. As a family, we inspire current and future generations to steward family resources in service of our communities, creating better opportunities for those less privileged than we are. I am here tonight on behalf of the real estate team, and the proposed project we are talking about today is on the corner of Commercial and Old County Road in what has been rebranded the East Side Innovation District in San Carlos. After acquiring the project's multiple parcels in 2019, we participated with the other developers and community in the city staff-led East Side Vision Plan for our property's immediate neighborhood. This process was designed to ensure connectivity and a strong pedestrian experience for an area that would redevelop into higher density office use. We fully support the vision plan that was developed and designed a project to comply with the plan's requirements and goals. Aside from the community outreach we did within that visioning plan sessions, we met with the GESC neighborhood group earlier this summer, which resulted in some design modifications, as Lisa said. And we also met with the Chamber of San Mateo County and SAMCETA, San Mateo's Economic Development Association. As to our project timeline, post-entitlements, we feel confident that the current down market will recover and we will be able to secure an anchor tenant and get this building built. We are still excited by all the activity that has occurred in this area since 2019 and believe this will become a vibrant new office hub. While we've done the necessary upgrades to this building for it to be a life sciences or lab building, there is no reason we could not lease these buildings to a high-tech user or other commercial use. Lastly, I'd like to highlight that we are supportive of the city's Transportation Management Association, also called a TMA, and it will be a requirement of our entitlements to participate in the city's TMA through our conditions of approval. While we have developed real estate all over the Bay Area, this is our first development in San Carlos, and we hope to do more within this already vibrant community. I'm now going to turn it over to our architects, Mark and Belinda from Studios Architecture, to walk you through the details. We also have our civil engineer, landscape architect, and traffic consultant, as Lisa said, online should they need to field any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, members of the City Council, staff. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm Mark Fenninger, principal with Studios Architecture, the architect for the project. And I'd just like to start off by, just picking up on where Jeff left off. We're excited about this project, and part of this project involved a pretty, extensive community input and outreach. On your screen is a listing of, some of the people that we talked to through the process. And through this process, we got quite a bit of feedback, and that feedback did result in us, making what we think is really a better project. The project team isn't just us. There's an extensive team that helped us put this project together. They're listed here, and I won't go through all of it. Some of the project information, I think as I'm going through my presentation, I'm realizing Lisa's practically done my entire presentation for me. So forgive me, just because I practiced it, I'll probably say it twice. Just humor me with redundancy. But this 3.4 acre site, we're pretty excited about putting about 339,000 gross square feet on it. And what we're really excited about is the amenities from a design point of view that we thought were important, starting from on the north side of the site, the discovery path, and just really that being an opening entry to the site, adding bike lanes, creating an open space that will really activate Old County, finding a way to leverage that underpass that's a bike and pedestrian connection at the corner of Commercial and Old County. The project is located in the East Side Innovation District. Our site is shown here in red, and the Innovation District is highlighted in the light yellow. This district, for years has been single-story industrial use, and recently has seen quite a lot of development with new R&D buildings built, and several are being built. We do want to note that we have paid attention that just to the north of this district is a residential neighborhood. Across El Camino, the train tracks, is another residential neighborhood, but in this light orange, you can see it's really quite close to the downtown. The city, in creating the East Side Innovation District Plan, established big moves, and there was a whole series of big moves, and we felt that it was critical to incorporate every big move that we could into the plan, just because we thought that it was quite visionary. We thought it would help connect the site to the rest of the district as it gets built out. And we thought it was really important to bring, this vision to life. And this does include adopting the discovery path. It does include the activity center, as well as several other things like promoting environmental stewardship. By really championing an all-electric green building, REACH code building. And then really investing in multimodal transportation and thinking hard about how you can create safe bike and pedestrian through the site. This is an axon drawing or a drawing of our project, and our site is outlined in red. It's gotten a little misaligned with the actual project, but what we're showing below our site is the Minkoff proposed development, and on the other side is the Alexandria development. And we're showing this to you just to put into context the scale of our project compared to current developments. And we really thought hard about wanting to stay within that scale. But also, we did think hard about the site is visible from the residential side of San Carlos, and we thought about how can we break this building down so that it doesn't just look like one building along the street. How can we make it look like 2 or 3 buildings? Just to give you a little window into the way we work, this is some of the first-hand sketches that we created for the project. The drawing on the right sort of outlines a concept of, is there a way to take the site and around the perimeter wrap it with, I'm just going to say, a protective shell. We were thinking, a heavy shell that can protect the interior from the environment, help really reduce the amount of energy that the site would need. And then within that, can we create a central heart, that open space, and create transparency that really looks at it? The drawing on your left is really our first vision of the project that shows this idea of a central open space, with a potentially, I'll just say a harder surface around the perimeter and the glass looking into that central space. We spent some time walking around this neighborhood, and we were really interested in what we call the local vernacular. And there's a lot of these industrial buildings, and some of them, people might just drive by, but they're actually interesting. These buildings that are made of brick, and it sort of evokes industrial pragmatism. There's a lot of concrete in the rail and the highway that evoke, a strength, sort of like a basic infrastructure. And then there's these metal buildings that are all over this area. And what really attracted us is they have all these different roofs, and the way these roofs hit the skyline sort of made us wonder, is there a different way a project can hit the skyline than a standard flat roof? We thought it was real important to create a language that made it feel like the design came from the site and really belonged here. In this drawing, it sees pulling all of these ideas together. Now looking from the San Carlos downtown side, looking at the site where you can see this idea of 2 forms around a central courtyard, really forming a heart, and having these elevated terraces that look into that heart, and then wrapping these buildings with this brick facade that sort of evokes this, like I said, this sort of industrial pragmatism, and then using that facade to break it down into what potentially looks like 3 buildings, playing with the mass so that the tallest part on the site is in the middle of the site, and it gets shorter as you go towards Branston, and the building steps back as you go towards commercial. Lisa went over much of the aspects of the plan, but one thing I really want to emphasize about the plan as we see it is that we think that this site, the way it sits on the edge of Old County, the intersection of this underpass, it's a real opportunity to begin to knit this site back into the fabric and actually create the bones of a structure of a more integrated master plan that the vision plan envisioned. And that starts on the left with the discovery path. This is really the entryway into the discovery path, and we think it's critical to begin by actually building that entryway to encourage future developments to keep building it. Along Old County, the integration of bicycle lanes to really emphasize this as a strong bicycle corridor. This actually is pretty active for bicycles traveling, commuting through the site. Thinking about how you might add street trees along Old County as a way of really bringing some life to it. The central courtyard itself is a way of activating the site and knitting it back visually back to Old County, as well as when you go by on the train. And then finally on Commercial Street, thinking of the city had this vision of Commercial Street being a pedestrian connection and really leveraging that underpass to create this activity hub at that corner. a way to pull this all together, we thought that it was critical to then think about how do cars come in and out of the site, and we intentionally pushed those entries to the rear of the site to liberate the intersections for bike and pedestrian connections, and really sort of allow this all to happen. To some of the details of the design, we do want to talk about this discovery path and how important we think it is, how to design a discovery path that provides ample width for people to travel by bike and on pedestrian, how to provide trees for shade. And as Lisa said, during feedback from the community, we heard that actually how tall of a tree you can get was critical. People wanted tall trees, so we moved the initial design of the tree was along the curb, and we moved it to the middle of the path, which let us get a taller tree and still allow, there's a critical angle for a fire truck ladder to hit the parapet. And so that's what drives the tree height. And so by moving the tree as close to the building, we're able to get a taller tree. Looking at the courtyard itself, from a detail point of view, the landscape architect, consciously thought about making sure we have native plants that are drought tolerant. It's just another way of connecting a site to the land. It's by thinking of what type of plants actually grow here or really want to grow here in this environment, but also how do you do it in a way that provides a landscape that people will want to go to and people will enjoy being in. And then thinking about the types of uses on that site, how a plaza can support those uses. And then finally, with this activity hub at the corner of Commercial and Old County, we thought it was really important to activate this corner. And the way we're doing it is through two steps. One is providing an outdoor terrace, which is slightly elevated, kind of like a front porch, making sure it both has pedestrian and handicap or wheelchair access, and then activating this front porch with the retail component of the site right there on this corner. And then maybe just getting into some more details just to make sure we hit the points. All throughout all of this, we're thinking about sustainability and what sustainability measures can we take into the project. Going back to this original idea of a hard shell, we really thought this idea of a brick building with sort of a punched window look. One of the things it does is it provides less windows than a typical all-glass building, which in turn provides less heat load and reduces the amount of energy you need to condition the space. So from the very beginning, the design is reducing the loads that are on the building, and we think therefore environmentally responsible. We're finding ways to weave in photovoltaics panels on the roof, provide electric vehicle, EV vehicles. There's bike parking and showers, drought-tolerant landscape, as I mentioned, and the whole building will be designed to a LEED Gold equivalent. We understand that some of the discussions has talked about, what do you do with the soil? And one of the aspects of the site that we thought critical in order to keep the masses of the building low, and we didn't want to have a big parking garage sitting up in the air, is we intentionally took the parking garage and pushed it 2 stories below while still hitting the requirements parking for the types of use. And this does result in the need to mass excavate the site to about 23 feet. The full intention is that will be done in a way that all the contaminated soil will be removed, and it will be done in a way that is consistent with the site management contingency plan, which does have oversight and review. And then just coming back to the big vision, Lisa showed this, but it does start with this central courtyard. And it does start with providing an open heart that's open to Old County and open to this edge of this vision plan. And then thinking about creating a building that the masses step down into it with outdoor terraces that look at it, the brick buildings. And one detail is thinking about how you can change the design of the parapet. We push the parapet back. The parapet is it's a 4-foot tall wall that's required by OSHA to keep someone from falling off the roof if they're up there maintaining it. But rather than having it at the edge, we pushed it back a little bit, slightly changed the color so that it would be more of a sky gray, so it disappears to the sky just to hopefully create a thinner edge. And then from the other view of the plaza, thinking about how can we make this plaza also inviting to the public. Lisa mentioned a portion of it is dedicated, and thinking about how do you actually make sure that it can actually be actively used through providing benches and shade, and actually think of how you can make it a place where people will want to stop and feel like it's welcome for them to stop. The view from across Old County and how breaking down the mass into 3 buildings rather than just 2 buildings, and also thinking about how the roof screens can maybe be shaped instead of just a vertical wall. And then maybe just to bring it all home, just the final view from the underpass, I think what we're really excited about is, again, this idea of knitting this site back together into the neighborhood with along Old County, providing safe bike lanes for people to take their bike through the site, really building Old County up as a corridor through the street trees, thinking about the mass and the material of the building that looks like it belongs here with the brick and the metal roof, the concrete base. And then finally, this underpass, which today, it seems like such an opportunity. How can you really use that as the fulcrum of the whole site and create a front porch with a retail use off of it that'll really activate it? We're excited about this, and we're happy to answer any questions that may come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there more, Lisa, from your end? Are you guys ready for questions?
That concludes the presentations. We're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, everyone. So do any of my colleagues have questions on this project? We'll give everyone a second to kind of gather. All right, we will start with Councilmember Collins and then Councilmember Venkatesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, Jim, the first question is for you regarding your economic and fiscal impact report. I noticed that this was written a couple years ago, and my question, other than I suppose numbers have changed a little bit, is there anything else about the bones of it that have changed that we should know about? Anything significant? Or are the basic assumptions still the same?
I mean, I think the market has gotten tighter, obviously, in general. So as was mentioned even by the applicant tonight, things are, not quite what they were, a year and a half ago when we did that economic analysis. Costs have obviously escalated, although they've not escalated quite so much in the last 12 months as they did the first, part of last year. And then we know financing costs have gone up and other things. So that does affect profitability of the project, but we still feel that we're pretty confident with the numbers that we have here today.
All right. And you mentioned profitability earlier in your presentation. I'm curious, you also you have a section where you talk about conforming alternative. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So what that means is if the project came in without any kind of, if it came in without needing any kind of discretionary approvals, what would that project look like? In this case, that would be about 150,000 square foot building, because it's an FAR of 1.0 on the site, and with obviously the height, which would certainly work at about that size. So that's about half the size of what the applicant is proposing for the project today.
All right, and so can I assume that when you say there's a feasibility gap of 9.5 million, meaning it's not feasible,
it's not
because
feasible,
they'd
right.
lose nearly $10 million on it?
Right, yeah, it would be, these projects, for them to be successful, for the types of tenants that they're after, they need to be at the right scale and size for that to work. And so that's where, you get into a larger project definitely attracts a wider variety and higher quality of tenant, which pays a higher quality rent.
Okay, and I think for the moment, I have one more question. I think this is for Lisa or our environmental consultant. I noticed that the project is just subject to environmental review. Do we typically not do EIRs for this kind of project?
So when we determine whether or not we're going to prepare an EIR, a mitigated negative declaration, or even if it's exempt from CEQA entirely, we kind of start with the initial study checklist, and that's provided in the CEQA guidelines. And so we go through that checklist, and it has all the categories that you saw in that mitigated negative declaration. You actually see the checklist in there. If anything says, potentially significant, then that leads us to prepare a mitigated negative declaration. If everything said no impact, right, then we could say it's a negative declaration or it's exempt. Right. If anything says potentially significant, even with the mitigation, that's absolutely an EIR. We also take into consideration the size and the scale of the project with the community. So when the Alexandria full block development came in, we didn't even bother with the checklist. We said full EIR, right? It's that size and scale of a development. But most of them can be handled with the mitigated negative declaration, which is what we've prepared for the other projects of similar size to this one.
All right, that's helpful. Thank
And
you.
we do have our CEQA consultant on it as well, if you want a further explanation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Collins. Before I forget, I just want to see if anyone has any disclosures before I move any further.
I have a
Start with-
disclosure.
I'll go down with Councilmember McDowell and move this direction.
Thank you. I just wanted to disclose that I did meet with the applicant. The presentation was informational only, and it will not impact my vote tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yeah, I also had a recent meeting with Sobrato. It was informative. Appreciate it.
Okay, I also met with the applicant for an informational meeting, and it will not impact my decision tonight. Councilmember Collins.
Same with me. I met with Jeff Sobrato via Zoom actually today. I asked a lot of questions. I also had a conversation about this project yesterday with our planning director, Al Savay, and again, I echo my colleagues that it has no impact on my decision.
Okay. Councilmember Venkatesh.
I also met with Sobrato, and it will have no impact on my decision.
Okay, thank you. And then you were next up for a question.
Oh, my question is, so this probably for Lisa, I'm thinking, the city impact fees. So these are a one-time fee, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So I see that $6.6 million for the affordable housing, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I read through the packet, and it's about 1,400 full-time jobs, correct? Projected. So 6.6, to be realistic, is about 6 homes in our community. So I'm just questioning, where are the people who work with the custodians and the childcare workers? Where are they going to go in this building?
That's a question for me.
Maybe.
Well, the below market impact fee, right, was established by the City Council, and it was prepared based on a nexus study that determined, right, based on the square footage, how much of an impact fee could be collected, and there's a range in that study. And then the council made a decision based on that range. If you go much higher, you may not see development in the community because you're costing out that commercial development. And then if you go much lower, right, it doesn't really effectuate our opportunity to build more housing in the community. So these developments are all within our general plan standards for the size that we were intending for the community to grow. And so we do kind of look at that with the housing element and the commercial development, try to get a balance there. As well, you know, there's a regional aspect to this. There's a lot of residences in other communities. It's right on that Caltrain corridor, so it could be a larger draw than just from San Carlos. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Venkatesh. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first, welcome to San Carlos. I know Sobrato's built throughout the Bay Area, and very glad to have locally based developers so involved, and glad you're working in San Carlos. I was just struck by 11,000 truckloads. That was not a typo, I assume. Okay. And maybe this is for Lisa. How do we manage that? I mean, that is a significant, like, how many will that be per day? You know, I know we have a route that we probably prescribed, but like, I mean, that does strike me as a pretty heavy impact locally. And just how did we think through that? And what is that going to mean to people in this area, or any of us trying to get out to 101?
Sure. So the Planning and Transportation Commission did review the grading and the dirt haul route, but more importantly, it's reviewed by the city engineer, our traffic engineers, and they're the ones that are really going to manage that when it comes time to construction. So they make sure they limit the dirt haul hours, so they cannot happen. I believe it has to be after 9 a.m. and before 4 p.m. is the dirt haul hours, so it's not during those commute times. And then they'll also make sure that the route is cleaned, it's swept, so that there's not dirt on the surface. They have to be covered as well. But it pretty much goes out, I think it's to Britain to 101, or if they need to get northbound, then they would go industrial to Holly.
Okay.
And so that would really be managed by Public Works Engineering.
Okay, got it, thank you. But I definitely appreciate the applicant's obviously willingness to completely remove 23 feet of soil, I know some of which has contaminants. That's a major commitment, but moreover, burying 2 stories of parking. I think that sets a fine example for our east side, and I would hope more of our applicants are looking at burying parking over there. Thank you, that's all I had.
Okay. Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see. I wanted to thank staff for including the community benefits analysis that Mr. Simon's team wrote, and I appreciated seeing all of that backup information. I think my first question might be for Lisa. When we're talking about community benefits, there's a sentence that says RSG recommends that the city seek up to $8.3 million. And it looks like we went with the 7, or for Jim. Why didn't, I actually think it's for our negotiating team, why didn't we seek out the 8.3 million instead of 7?
Do you want?
I'll repeat.
Sorry, Lisa, for you.
Lisa, I think it's for you. Or maybe Al.
No, she changed the question.
My
Lisa,
question is,
she
I didn't-
modified the question. Sorry.
Thank you. I know you're busy running around answering questions. My question is, when you were negotiating and Jim's report says we can seek up to 8.3 million, why didn't we go for that number? We went for 7 million, and Jim's report says we could have gone for 8.3.
Yeah, so I defer to Al Savez, the lead on negotiations.
Thank you.
He's asked me to answer, so I'll provide an answer. So the reason is we look at a variety of different metrics in terms of returns on investment, and that's what generates the different yields, which you saw in the report. We don't necessarily pick the one that's the most optimistic. We pick the middle ground because we feel like that's what establishes the point in which we think every investor is going to gravitate towards is the middle number. So that's why we went with that. And the range is just simply because we look at different types of returns. We don't necessarily say everybody's going to pick an IRR or everybody's going to pick this particular yield or whatever. So that's why it's that number. So it's a range because there's a different range of potential outcomes in terms of what an investor might look at.
Okay. Okay, all right. I'll think about that. My second question gets into Table 2, which I appreciated seeing. The contingency of 7% is 13.3 million, and that's a really big number to build in as a contingency. And that impacts, again, how much we get out of community benefits. So do we go back and check and see if that 13 million contingency was used? Is that an especially generous number? It seems like a big number to me. How do we think about that?
For this point in time in a project, that's not a very large contingency as a percentage of total. As you get closer to construction, you'll typically get that number down. We do not have a process right now at the city in which we're auditing project costs. So that's not part of the way that you're typically evaluating these things. We do know, obviously, construction costs have gone up 35%, material costs in the last 2 years. So obviously things like that are going to get, come into play. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. But
Yes, it does. I'm trying to raise some concerns. I think that lease rates also tend to go up. I noticed that, this is my last question, Mr. Mayor. Page 11.
Fine, you can keep going.
I'll give everybody else a turn. The lease rate that you used was $525 a square foot. And that seems kind of low to me, and I'm wondering if we look at, I know that you looked at other similar properties, but what is, for example, like the Meridian 25 building leasing at in San Carlos?
I don't have those numbers in front of me tonight, but I will tell you that, yes, lease rates have gone up and so have cap rates, which affects the valuation of the property as well. So as lease rates go up and cap rates go up, that actually can have an offsetting effect, which they have. So that's why I was saying that I don't believe the overall value of the project has significantly moved from overall where it was a year and a half ago. Lease rates have gone up, but so have cap rates. So that's an offsetting effect.
Okay, all right. I'll defer to my colleagues for questions. Thank you for those answers.
Okay, Councilmember Venkatesh. Or did I not take your
No, I had a similar question, just to reiterate what Councilmember McDowell just stated. So 525 for rental per square footage. Now, in life sciences, would that be higher typically? Do you get higher rent for a life science building?
Yes.
So I'm just questioning the community benefits. Like if we took the higher number for life sciences, we could get more for our community, correct?
Well, we're assuming that analysis that we did for you was based on a life science prototype. So that's what the rents were at the time that we were using. So.
Okay, but if you took a lower number, correct?
We took the lower profitability number, yes.
Okay. So I'm just.
But we didn't take the
Right.
range was between 6.5 to 8.
So.
And so we came to 7. So.
What if you took the 8 though?
Yeah,
Asking.
you certainly could. I mean, again, historically, the way that you have done these analyses in the past is you look at a variety of different ways that an investor might make a return on investment, and then you pick that middle number. That's typically the way we've been doing it. If we say, well, we're going to only pick the most profitable scenario because that's what serves the city's policy, that would be a difference in how you've done things in the past.
Thank you.
That's all. Yeah.
Okay. Are there, okay, if not, I will go and we can go to round 2 after. So I guess, Jim, we'll have you come back up. Sorry. So I get where you sort of kind of looked at the 2 differences on things, but I mean, even if you, I'm just saying, example, even if you took the middle of what your 8.3 and 6.5, 7's not the middle of that, right? We're still short by $400,000 on that one, for example. So when you say we sort of met in the middle, it seems like we didn't quite meet in the middle. So tell me a little more about how you got to the 7. Sorry to put you on the hot seat.
Yeah, I can't speak to how, why it's 7 and not 7.4. I mean, I think, as I said, we've looked at a variety of different ways, and that's how we came to the number of recommending $7 million. And it's, the report that we provided does provide, again, the different outcomes, and there's different ways to look at it. Not every investor is going to look at the same project the same way. We certainly didn't consult with this investor as to how are they going to determine their return on investment. That's not something that they would necessarily be expected to provide. But that's why we have to look at it a variety of different ways and came to that approach.
Okay. And then this is not for you, Jim. I guess maybe for Lisa, or can you, or maybe for the architect, when you talk about sort of the pedestrian pathways or the discovery paths, what is different in that than what you would normally be required to do by the city? Because I see a path with some trees and not a lot of, I mean, there may be other things that I just want to understand what goes into making a discovery path versus we sort of redid the sidewalk.
So yeah, it's much larger. You would probably just see the pedestrian sidewalk
I see.
in this graphic here. They also have the 4-foot planting, the bike lane, and additional planting. And then if you could see that red dash line that goes through the tree, that's their property line.
I see.
So everything right on the street side is the public right-of-way, and then inside is the Sobrato property, where there will be a public access easement over that. So they are utilizing part of their property to provide this large pedestrian pathway as well as bike path.
All right. And then, so I guess part of one of the questions I have is, maybe a little bit about sort of the retail space in terms of what's intended for there and what kind of hours to be expected for that, would you imagine? I don't know if that's for Jeff or somebody for that space.
I'm not sure, Lisa, jump in here, but that the development agreement calls out hours for the retail, does it? I can't remember, but we've been working with Greg quite a bit to kind of put this language together in the DA that would require this to be publicly accessible retail during, all retail business hour operations. there would be no way for this to be like tenant serving retail. It has to be publicly serving retail.
So no way to be tenant serving retail.
Yeah.
Okay.
The tenants in the building would have access to, if it's a cafe, coffee shop, just like anyone else in the public.
Okay. And then you have additional sort of food service or something built into the building, sort of behind the, past the sort of the publicly accessible area, is that right?
We wouldn't be building that out. That would be part of, the tenant improvement dollars that we provide to the tenant to build out their space. And I would imagine that, if you had a tenant taking more than multiple floors, they would put in their own cafe.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I saw in the drawing, I thought there was sort of, it said something like outdoor kitchen and sort of benches. And that's what I was trying to understand what that was versus the cafe.
Yes, there's a an outdoor kitchen amenity that's going to be in that large courtyard.
I see,
with a
but that's sort of for
barbecue.
a barbecue for them to use, not food service necessarily.
Yes,
Sort of that.
exactly.
That piece. Okay.
They could book, reserve that space for a party or whatever during
event or type of thing.
through asset management. Yeah,
That's
property
helpful.
management.
So, okay. That's helpful. I think that's all I have for right now. I'll go see if there's another round of questions. Thank you.
Sure.
Does anyone else have questions?
I don't have a question, but I
Yes.
do have a little bit of additional perspective that I wanted to confirm with staff as I was remembering as we were talking about the difference in the economic analysis, is when the analysis was done, one impact fee did not exist. So that would be the childcare impact fee, which came into effect in 2022. So prior to that, we would have been negotiating for those benefits, and then after the impact fee, that was sort of moved from the community benefit realm into the impact fee realm and formalized by the council. So when you put those two numbers together, you really are talking about that 8 point whatever million number.
Sure. Other questions, or do you want to move to public comment and then do another round before we close the public hearing? All right, let's move to public comment right now, and then we may come back before we close the public hearing. Okay, Crystal, is there any public comment on this item?
Okay, we do have a few hands up, 3, 4, 5 at the moment. First up is Jeff Malley. You should be able to unmute, and you'll be followed by Solomon Liu.
Awesome. So first, I just wanted to thank the City Council for holding this meeting tonight and allowing public comment. And I wanted to thank Sbrato. I'm on the GESC board, and we did attend a presentation of theirs, and I thought they were very forthcoming and open, and it was really rather a nice call. I just have a handful of questions. One, I understand they're going to be excavating the hazardous dirt down to 25 feet. I just am a little concerned about that excavation process and the aerosolization, if I can, of that dirt across the neighborhood. It does seem like the buildings will be using a lot of water, and just given recent heat and water usage across the state, I'm wondering if there's any concerns about whether or not we're going to run out of water. I noticed that recycled water is apparently not available in San Carlos, so not required here, but I would ask the developers to maybe include support for that, as maybe it will happen in the future. It'd be nice to have that support already there. And then finally, there was a lot of mentions of the walkthrough at Arroyo underneath the tracks. Well, I think that's an awesome feature. Old County does see a lot of traffic, and so a lot of pedestrian traffic across Old County might be troubling for the traffic. So if that really is going to be something required, I don't know if it's possible to consider building an elevated pedestrian walkway to ease the traffic on Old County at that point. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Okay, next up is Solomon Liu. You should be able to unmute.
Hi, thank you, council members, for holding this meeting. I just wanted to give some feedback on sort of the non-car traffic planning I'm seeing in this project. And while it's great to see, that two-way, marked bike lane, I'm wondering how that connects to sort of the rest of that. It would kind of suck if the bike lane just ended at, where it connects to the property. Old County, I believe, does technically have a bike lane, but it's just really narrow and not super well maintained and not very well marked. Also, that crossing is not signalized, and Old County is like a 30-mile-an-hour road, I think, that people drive 50 on. So I'm also concerned about the pedestrian crossing there, but I would not advocate for a raised pedestrian crossing. That's just not good for pedestrians. Instead, I'd say, if it's a 30-mile-an-hour road, make it a 30-mile-an-hour road and put a signal there, because people do not stop at that crossing right now. I think there's a light. There might be a button that flashes some lights, but it's not very effective. Definitely have more than one driver just blow past that. Visibility also isn't great coming out of that tunnel. It is a tunnel, so you're kind of have to peek around the wall to see the cars or bikes coming down that way. So hope that can all be taken into account as you're building out. I would really love to see more connection to the east side, and but I think it's just got to be done right. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Solomon.
Okay. Up next is Debbie Baldacci, and
Okay.
will be followed by Dimitri Vandelis.
Okay, Debbie, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rack and members of the City Council. We submitted a 7-page letter. I'm sorry it got there late tonight. Our email was malfunctioning, but we incorporated by reference to these comments for more detail and page numbers. Number one, 2 quick things. We notice in the development agreement that the applicant asked for reserve capacity for water as necessary to serve the project. They use 15 million gallons a year. Quarry Road uses 27 million gallons, and all of these developments will use many millions of gallons. So we don't think the commercial developers should have priority over water over residents during a drought. The next thing is, we don't think that the mitigated negative declaration was sufficient environmental review. That's usually very difficult to challenge, but we learned last Monday at the Planning Commission meeting that an EIR will provide environmentally superior alternatives, which include lower density, and they would perhaps lower height and not allow underground parking. The development that considered was a hotel development at 501 Industrial. So we asked why there was an EIR required for that site and not for this one. And one of the things the CEQA consultant said is that it's a political call. We were very concerned about that because this development and others, this is 3 times bigger than the hotel development. It has hazardous material in the soil that requires vapor barriers. And the alternative recommended for the hotel, the superior alternative, was 2 floors lower, 4 floors rather than 6. So of all these developments, this one and Quarry Road should have had an EIR, and we think it's sufficient. Please deny approval for the mitigated negative declaration. Please do not give this developer priority for water over residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, next up we have Dimitri Vandelis, who should be able to unmute, and you'll be followed by Giovanni.
Yes, hi. Thanks, City Council, for your excellent questions earlier. There are a couple of things I wanted to talk about regarding this. Just as a point here, the developers talked a lot about being part of the East Side Visioning Program, but given that this is planned development, they are asking for significant increases in height. So when we found that out, we met with Sobrato and Jeff Sobrato. We had a very good meeting, as Jeff Maley described, and we got a few sort of minor changes in place. But what I'd really like to see is staff informing the GESC community earlier on all of these planned developments, so we can have a little bit more time to make better, more substantive changes. To wit, the height is over what we would have wanted. That dialogue didn't happen until we spoke out. The questions I have and concerns are how much of that courtyard is actually open to the public. I don't know if there's a part that's open and a part that isn't. That it would be great to get some clarity there. My concern is the setback along Old County isn't as good as it could be. I understand some of those, the trade-offs that they have to make, but that's just the point that looking at the drawings. And my concern is, my understanding is we're going to have a good bike path along Old County Road that'll be, 2 ways and separated from the traffic, which is excellent. But there's a lot of talk about that bike path that's along, I forget what the street is called, that it's going to be a bike path to nowhere that isn't going to connect to anything. So I'd like a little more clarification on that. And, that outdoor kitchen is not going to be open to the public. Are there going to be any meeting spaces for the community? Those are questions that we have. And I think the bottom line is, as you saw in the earlier slides, there's another planned development that's significantly closer to the community and with the, I forget what you call all that stuff that goes on top of the building. It's going to be 130, 135 feet.
And Dimitri, I need you to wrap up. Your time's up.
Right. Thanks. So I'll finish with I don't want planned developments to be used as a workaround against all of the hard work we did for the East Side Visioning.
Okay. Thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you. Next up is Giovanni, and then he'll be followed by Jennifer Rossi.
Okay, Giovanni.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor Raff. How are you again? I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
I mean,
hello?
Giovanni, can you hear me? Oh, he's raising his hand.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you text him or anything? Is there any way to do that? Or not really? Okay. I don't know. I mean, where the cameras, we can hear you. I mean, yeah. Okay. Maybe do we have other speakers? Maybe we can try and go back and do that. See if we can try to get him to fix his audio.
Yes, we'll go ahead and move on to Jennifer Rossi.
Okay.
You should be able to.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Unmute.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Thank you, City Council and Mr. Sobrato. I am also part of the GESC board, and I wanted to just talk about the dirt removal. I am concerned about it being routed down Industrial to Holly. I'm pretty sure that we actually talked to Sobrato about routing it like to Britain. And then if they need to go north, then going, going on the freeway slightly and then turning around and going back on Whipple, I guess it would be, or Veterans, I don't know, whatever's over there. So I don't know if that would be something to do, mostly because there could be toxic soil that could come out, and the fact that it was a discussion that it would make sure that those areas where the trucks go are swept clean leads me to believe that the soil is expected to leave the truck. So if there's toxic soil that's going through neighborhoods with a lot of children, I'm very concerned about that. And I also want to make sure that there's sufficient coverage over the top of the trucks to make sure it's not flying out. Which Sobrato told us there would be, but I hope that that's captured somewhere and then that's followed through on. And then the other thing is the bike lane. I'm super excited that we'll have a safe bike lane on Old County. And also it'd be awesome if the city could plan to make sure what I think Mr. Liu talked about also, just making sure that the bike lane connects and that is well thought out. Because I think Sobrato's doing it in front of their property, which is great, and hopefully there'll be ample setbacks that are in accordance with the East Side Vision but if we could extend it so that it makes sense for bikers and that it's a safe route for kids to go to school, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. And I will say a few of these comments we'll make sure to address before we move on after, because I think we have the responses for this. Okay, Crystal, is there other?
So Giovanni raised his hand again. Let's see if this works.
See if it works this time.
Giovanni, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I had to call in from my phone because my computer is not working properly. I apologize for that.
No problem.
Oh, we can hear you.
A couple of quick questions. I'm just getting late for you guys. Appreciate all that you do. Obviously, it's all hard work after a hard day. Has anyone looked at Old County Road at 5 p.m.? All these buildings are being approved and built, and I've been working in that neighborhood since 1981, and you cannot leave that area in Old County Road after 5 p.m. And we're concerned as business owners in the area how we're going to leave and work and prosper with all that extra traffic.
Okay. We can try to address your question after. Did you have other comment to make?
Well, the other comment is I found it kind of peculiar that the developer would meet with each council member separately and not together as a group.
Okay. They're not allowed to meet with us together as a group. It's illegal to do that.
Okay.
That's why we're having the meeting now in public.
But you guys said earlier in the meeting that you guys met separately with them all at separate times.
Correct.
Independently, behind closed doors. Each one of you separately with the developer. I just find that peculiar.
Okay.
It's just a shame you're going to displace a lot of businesses that have been in the area for decades that have built the city of San Carlos. And there's a lot of neighbors that are very disappointed that work and live and prosper. They're essential to the city's economic growth and development. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. And
Any other public comment?
there are no further hands.
Okay. So before we move on, there's a couple items I saw that were raised. I just want to make sure we can provide some clarification regarding the gray water pipes. I believe those are in place. I think that was raised by Jeff Nally, that they're in place, but we don't have access to it right now, but it is prepped for that moving forward.
That's correct. This project does have dual plumbing.
I'm sorry?
No.
Oh, well, should we can close the public hearing, I guess? Sure. Unless council members have other questions first. If not, we're good to go.
Well, we could,
Go for it. Go for it. Close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Chris, I have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll?
Okay. Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Venkatesh?
Yes.
And Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that passes. The public meeting hearing is closed. Lisa, if you can answer that, I have a couple questions to follow up. If you can,
Sure,
on
or I
the
can
gray water pipes.
Go through my list
Sure.
of responses.
Of course.
If you want, and see if I hit them all. So the soil excavation, maybe we can just talk about the grading operations a little bit, and I believe there's some mitigation measures as well to address that. So all loads are required to be covered. That's, I believe, a street code, not a city code, right? It's required everywhere. Loads are required to be covered, and if not, you're going to get a ticket from the police. In addition to that, there's some requirements when you leave the site when you're doing grading operations. So they usually have those rough rocks and you wash off the tires. So a lot happens when they're exiting the site from grading to make sure that that soil does not go into the road. If for some reason it does, though, there is a requirement that it's promptly swept. So I just wanted to address that. The grading and dirt haul certificate and the dirt haul route was approved by the Planning and Transportation Commission, but we can let the Public Works Director and the city engineer know about some of the concerns raised by the neighborhood as far as the route goes. The water usage, they did have a water supply demand study that was prepared because of the size of the project. And so Cal Water did determine that they have sufficient water to serve this development. And that's considering all other cumulative projects that are planned for the area.
Okay.
The two-way cycle track, that is implementing what's already in our bike and pedestrian master plan. So that is intended to go the length of Old County Road, and we're implementing it as these new developments come in. We're making sure that there's sufficient width to implement that cycle track. I believe at this point it ends going north of Holly because the right-of-way gets a little narrower, but we're looking at that as part of the Northeast specific plan to see if there's some opportunities to modify it. So this project would implement that. I can have the traffic engineer talk about their analysis because I know there was some concern about pedestrians crossing Old County Road. And just for when you look at this development, a signal was not warranted at Commercial Street at Old County Road, but we did include the pedestrian beacon at Branston. So I can have the city's traffic engineer discuss that if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, those are my notes.
And can you just clarify, Lisa, for me on the route for the dirt? Is that right now what the Planning Commission approved was to go down to Britain, or is that not the case?
It's to go out Britain,
Okay.
But then if you need to, because most of the dirt haul does go south because that's where most of the dirt is taken. But if for some reason it needs to go north, then we would have it route on Industrial and then out Holly.
Okay. But the intention is to go out that way versus towards the neighborhoods. Okay.
And so the trucks may arrive coming northbound, but they're most likely going to, obviously, they can't get off on Britain.
Right.
They're going to mostly depart southbound.
Okay. Perfect. And then you said the traffic engineer is on or is not on?
The CEQA traffic engineer, Mark Spencer, do you want to talk a little bit about your analysis of the intersection?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you for the opportunity to do that. A couple of questions came up. One was regarding the pedestrian crossings and pedestrian safety, pedestrian movements from the site along Old County through the tunnel over towards Caltrain. So there's a series of sidewalk improvements, it's a series of pedestrian improvements, and there's also going to be the pedestrian activated light. It does not warrant a traffic signal in terms of full vehicular access, one that would be there for anything other than pedestrian crossings at this time. Could be upgraded as such in the future if need be. But this is actually a pretty good enhancement and a good way to have connectivity between this site as well as other development that's occurring in the area in East San Carlos and the Caltrain station. One of the other questions that came up was regarding what does Old County Road look like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? I've been out there a lot at 5 o'clock in the afternoon as well as many other hours. And quite frankly, Old County Road has been getting busier and busier for several years. We'll take, the COVID years aside from that. But what we do have is an analysis. There's two sets of analyses that are presented. One is a CEQA analysis, which is vehicle miles traveled, safety, circulation. To answer the question more fully, there's a separate traffic operational analysis that's non-CEQA. Traffic intersections, level of service, roadway segments, things that we typically and previously looked at in environmental documents that are now non-CEQA but traffic operations. All of those were considered, including the flows on Old County Road. And it also includes bringing in projects from the traffic impact fee and what effect those would have, and also where additional improvements might be needed. And all of that is actually included and been reviewed by city staff as part of the separate traffic operational analysis. I'll stop there just to kind of let you know the breadth of the analysis that we did conduct as part of this on behalf of the city. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. All right, I did see a question from Councilmember Collins, where he's got his hand raised, and then Vice Mayor Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, Lisa, you said that there's a traffic, like a pedestrian light signal at the intersection of Branston and Old County. Isn't the underpass at Commercial?
Right. I believe that's also intended for bicycles to cross as well at Branston.
I mean, will there be a beacon at Commercial and Old County
Not
Road?
with this project. It's likely to occur if the Alexandria project moves forward.
Okay, so eventually it's
At
going to show
commercial.
up. Yeah, because
That's
that's the most logical place for
Yes.
it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
This project didn't warrant it, but that other development does.
Got it. All right.
Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did appreciate Dimitri's question about the courtyard. It's certainly the East Side Vision statement is that our courtyards all be walkable and publicly accessible. Is there some exception to that here?
So the courtyard, the front portion, if you see kind of where the purple circles are, so forward of that towards the street, that's all publicly accessible, but the entirety of the site is not. It's just that front portion.
Oh, is that right? And what is the purpose of that? What's going, like, how will the public be barred from?
I'll let the applicant respond.
Yeah.
So as far as property management-wise, how this would work, I think it would be pretty similar to any of our multi-tenant buildings. So there would probably be key card access that gets you beyond that transparent gate, and behind that kind of larger areas where we're planning to put a barbecue and the type of stuff that tenants typically enjoy as outdoor amenity space. This is, I would say, more upgraded for us in what we're providing as outdoor amenity space because of the post-COVID world. We see a lot of demand to work outside and that sort of thing. So we're creating a public front courtyard, and then we think that it's necessary to be competitive and attractive in a leasing environment to have private, secured outdoor space for tenants.
Okay.
For safety reasons and.
No, I appreciate that clarification. I do personally find that inconsistent with the vision we've set for the east side. Our last two, the project we reviewed 2 weeks ago has a publicly accessible pickleball court and an amphitheater, all walkable. The Alexandria existing buildings have bocce courts and are all publicly accessible. So I guess I think maybe the question's for Al, like why would we have entertained this? I mean, is this, it seems to me this is more important than some of the other things it seems like we pushed for here.
Staff pushed for this with the developer on several occasions. I mean, we pushed really hard to keep it open in the middle. It seemed to be a deal killer for the developer at the time of negotiations. So that it's before you this evening. I mean, that's the intent of that front courtyard. We recognize that there's a need to be secure and to feel secure. But I would agree that some of the developments that follow this, like the quarry site, is more open than this development.
And am I correct in saying that our East Side Vision Plan definitely envisioned open courtyards?
Yes, I mean, it didn't say that all courtyards have to be open to the public, completely, but there's this intent to have open architecture to allow the community to engage with the site. We believe strongly in that, where we can make it work with these developers.
Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Councilmember Venkatesh.
Just one comment. We have a lot of children in our community. I don't see a place for children to use this space. That's just a comment.
All right. I had a question just on so is there any parking in here that's available to the public? You've got a cafe that's open, and how are we supposed to get there and park?
So let me get back to the site plan here. We have a bunch of parking spaces that kind of line this, early on we were told that we want our access to the property off of Old County Road. So it circulates through Branston and Commercial, and then it's got surface parking back there as well as like a portico share drop off for buses. And we offered that up as a possible community benefit for that to be publicly accessible parking on nights and weekends. So it was a negotiation piece, but there wasn't any value agreed to by staff. So as of now, we're planning on that parking to serve the building. So certainly if you wanted to access the retail, you could park at those parking spots.
So if I'm going to the retail in the front, I can use that surface parking lot, or I can't?
You could.
And will that be designated that way as parking for that, or how will someone know that they're not sort of in violation of any sort of rule set?
I don't think we've thought through that perfectly enough yet. We haven't done a signage plan or design for how the retail will be serviced. We also could carve out a portion of the garage that's secured versus not secured, which is what we've done at our office building in Mountain View, to provide some parking for the retail. But if anyone else, have we thought through that?
No, but it's pretty common to have. I apologize. We have not thought through a signage program, but it's totally possible to establish a signage program that clarifies parking spaces that are available for a certain retailer, for certain people, users of the certain site.
Okay, well, I guess, so that may be something we can add into the agreement, or that there's sort of designated parking for public use for the people are using the retail space. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Things? Yep, go ahead, Councilmember McDowell, why don't we do that? Yeah, sure, unless others, I don't see any other hands for questions, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make my comments now, and it builds on something that the Vice Mayor said. I too have been comparing, just because we have a lot of development projects coming forward right now, and so I've been comparing what we approved with 642 Quarry and this project. And I think both projects will have a big impact on our community. Both are asking for a significant increase in the FAR. And yet I can point to the Quarry project and say that the community is receiving a lot of benefits, both monetarily, but also things that we as a council and as a city can physically point to. Quarry has a childcare and lots of public amenities. John mentioned some of them: a pickleball court, an amphitheater, a public bathroom, public art, a bocce court, dog park, food service operated by Proper Food. They made a partnership with the Parks and Recreation Foundation. It's clear to me that they made a big effort, and they're making a big investment in our community. They really took to heart the East Side Vision Plan, and I don't think they're getting credit for any of those. The cafe open to the public, I don't think they're getting credit for. And with the Sobrato project, we're basically getting a deck, a cafe, some bike and ped infrastructure, but these to me seem more like the bare minimum, which their tenants are going to enjoy quite a bit as well. And I just think our community deserves more. I think that the checks that they're writing, it's significant, and I appreciate that, but those checks immediately depreciate in value. It's like driving a new car off the car lot. They immediately start depreciating. My desire has always been, and we've talked about this in our council retreats, is for these developers, when they come, to find a partner to build the affordable housing, to really make that impact. I personally am looking for more tangible, positive benefits that will help offset the big impact that this project will have on our community. And right now, I'm not seeing that. And so while I think that this project eventually could be a good addition to our community, my preference tonight would be to send it back for more work, to incorporate some of the things that have been raised by the council. I don't think this is on par with what happened with 642 Quarry, and the projects are not, that one is not double the size of the other. This one is about an acre less. So I understand this site is more constrained, but I'm personally looking for more benefits for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McDowell. Councilmember Venkatesh.
I'm going to agree with Sarah. I think we can do better for our community, and I feel like the community benefits don't equal what we can do. You're known for a philanthropy organization, and I don't think 6 homes in our community can be the impact of 1,400 new residents. So I'm going to say, like, we're a welcoming community. We're a city of good living, obviously, but we want benefits for all of our community and not just benefits for some of the tenants. So I'm just going to echo that, what Sarah said.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Venkatesh. Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm going to be the disagreeable voice here. I like the project. It's not perfect. Some projects are going to offer more. Some are going to offer less. We got the Minkoff project coming. We have the Alexandria project coming. We've already approved 642 Quarry Road. It seems a little odd to me that we should ask that every project provide all the benefits that one project agreed to provide simply because they provided it. I think that the fact that we've got a public plaza, which is not what's there now, is more. If we keep raising the bar, I think that we do ourselves a disservice. We're getting quite a bit of community benefit out of this. I'm okay with making some modifications here and there, but it really concerns me if we're setting this back that for the simple reason that we don't feel like we're getting enough. We're getting so much, and we've gotten so much, and we're going to get so much more. So I'm just I'm not satisfied with the view that they're not doing enough for us. I like the way it is. Could they do more? Yes. Could they do less? Yes, they could. But I'm satisfied with the way it is at the moment.
Okay. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, kind of a tough one. It's a handsome building, obviously a lot of good architecture, a lot of good effort and work. I certainly do welcome Sobrato to San Carlos. There's a lot they can do here. I will point out the positives of burying their parking and how expensive 23 feet of excavation would be. I do think that sets a terrific example. I know at least as I last saw it, Alexandria's parking garage is going to be shockingly large, none of it buried. I do appreciate the ways this plan does honor the East Side Vision Plan. So it does set some good examples. The commitment to EVs, the 20% already wired and 30% EV ready is a strong commitment to some of our goals as well. Surprised at the courtyard being largely closed, and I was also kind of surprised to see a cafe, which being a $500,000 benefit, when I would think the people that work there would appreciate it as well. So I guess I'll just say I'm torn by this. This is a big project. It's worth us taking our time on it. I do point out, I do believe these numbers, and it is nearly $20 million of benefit to the city. So this project has, a ton of merit, and it is delivering a lot. But I think Sobrato is the kind of organization that would want to be well represented in town and would want to put its best foot forward here. So I would support a continuance. I don't particularly have specific conditions I would put on it, but I think they've heard us this evening, and if they want to take a couple weeks to consider our input, I think value would be added to that if that's what the majority of the council believes.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Dugan. I actually had one question. Sorry, I wanted to bring one up. Because I want to follow up on Vice Mayor Dugan's comments about the cafe. And can you, Al, maybe, or Lisa, just talk about how we apply the community benefits? Because at Presidio Bay, there was no credit for the cafe, but there's one here. How do we determine to sort of create some consistency around how we make those determinations versus a cash payment?
Well, this site particularly, it was included in the vision plan as a community hub or activity center. And so that was kind of the start of our conversations. Presidio Bay honestly didn't even tell us that was going to be open to the public until that night. That was the first time I heard it. So it wasn't a negotiating item that they brought up and they even discussed with us. Their total benefit package was $4.3 million, and a lot of those, as you know, were credits. And so I think to the city is closer to $2 million. But I agree with you, there's substantial on-site benefit for the community with the Quarry project. And then this one, you know, given where the cafe is and that the other developments haven't proceeded on pace, it may take a while to kind of lease up that space. So that was a lot of the conversation around the community benefit.
Okay.
Yeah, there was some concern when we were discussing this particular issue that with other development in the area that we wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity to get a good tenant, and the other development in the area might be an impediment to getting a tenant in that space. So we wanted to recognize that it might take some time, and so that we developed this these provisions that deal with the 555,000. I mean, it will be a tenant space, but if it has a provision that says if it can't be leased because of exigent circumstances, that the city would get that community benefit, and then we can look to other places to have that kind of a business in town.
Okay. All right. So let me start with, I think there are some, as mentioned, there are some good things about this project. I like the bike lane. I like some of the fact that we're removing all the, that you are going down with the parking. I think that's a good thing to, tackle some of the things that we're trying to do, from removing some of the hazardous waste potential. And I think I struggle with the cafe piece, because I don't want to have just cafes sort of all over the place, and that those are sort of credits and we're not getting the other things we need for the community. So I think part of it is on us to also go back and sort of lay some specifics around what will count as a credit, what won't count as a credit. For things. I think things like the bike lane are certainly useful to have in there, and I think they're good things, and I think they're worth doing that, because they are benefiting the wider community as well, helping us with our transportation management program as well. And I appreciate all the work, and I know a lot of time and effort that goes into it. I think for me, I'm also, sort of the lack of openness is a challenge for me too. I mean, we've seen other projects. I've been to the Alexandria project. I've had events there. They have community space. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to do here. I think there's a lot of good in this project, but I think I would support trying to do a continuance, come back, and let's see what we can make this a little bit better, and I'll be a little bit happier with it. So if that, I'll take, I think we can either, if someone wants to make a motion on the project, or we can make a motion for continuance. I'm happy to take either.
Could I have a question for the city attorney?
You can.
Greg, if we were to make a motion for a continuance, do we continue it to a date uncertain, or what would be the wording for that?
I think I need to see how much time do we think to come back, if it's going to be a date certain. Is it 2 meetings? We don't know. Well, all that means is we have to renotice everything. If you do it to date uncertain, we have to renotice everything.
Thank you.
It's a public hearing.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move for a continuance of this project to a date uncertain.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. A motion and a second. Crystal, can you call the roll?
Councilmember Venkatesh? Yes. Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
No.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
And Mayor Rack?
Yes. Okay. The
passes.
item is continued. With that, we are moving on to agenda setting, and we have 2 items on here. Consideration of agendizing an item to discuss best practices and new standards to fully memorialize and communicate public access rights to private property with deeded public easements. I'm not sure whose this is.
Yeah, that's mine, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is just something we saw at 642 Quarry, and, hopefully we see it in this project as well, which is, our vision plan is coming around, and these public amenities are being set. And I just want to make sure we have a formal thought in place as these become fact, as far as how does our public know that these are public spaces? Will there be signage? Will there be parking? Will there be, I think we've already established it'll all be deeded access, but I think that's just guidance to staff. I would like to actually memorialize that all flavors of public access are in fact deeded. And then just, what are the best practices here? I just don't know, but I don't want to handle that ad hocly, because this is we're establishing some very important public rights here, and I just want to make sure we do it in the right way.
Okay, are there any thoughts, comments?
I would support that.
Okay. Anyone else? Sure. Okay. Sounds like we've got enough people to at least support looking into it. I think that's good. Thanks for bringing it up, John.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. The next item is consideration of agendizing an item to discuss the preparation of a historical resource inventory for the city. This is my item. As we sort of get closer to the 100th anniversary, I think there was an assessment done several years ago. Greg would know when we last did the
1991.
1991, okay. So I just want to see, given that time has changed, times have passed, looking at some of that, we have all the development going on, that we sort of at least do an assessment of both the commercial and residential properties. I'm happy to have them phased over time from a cost standpoint and timing, but I thought it would be good to try to kick off that inventory.
I guess I would just ask there would be new things added that are now historic that weren't historic in 91. I guess I'm trying to get my head around this.
I don't know. I think there may be items that we might want to look at, might be deemed historic. I think that some of that is the residents being aware of what the options are, because there are some tax benefits for it if they wanted to go there, and obviously there's some restrictions around it, but I think being able to kind of just do a review and assessment, it's been 30-something years, things, stuff that might be older now, might have historic significance since then. I'm not, and I think, if Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, I think if we sort of looked at something, the resident or the business owner would have to agree to certain provisions around that. Is that right? You can't just designate it. You'd have to go through a process if something was deemed as potentially historic.
Yeah, it's a pretty big, large process that you go through community-wide. Obviously, you're not making the decision to do that tonight. You're making the decision to agendize it. So, if you do go forward with that, we'll come back and give you a report of options and costs associated with it and timelines and whatnot, and probably give you some options for maybe some other projects that we could look at shifting around so we could get that work done.
I guess I'd be interested in learning more. I would have some concerns, but I would be interested in staff kind of bringing back the options.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I would really like to understand what we're embarking upon. Obviously San Mateo is dealing with a historic district controversy, and I just want to make sure we're not opening up something that our residents would perceive as a taking away of their rights or something like that. So, but certainly open to understanding it. We have some great history to be preserved here in town.
Yeah, and I'm not intending to create some historic district in San Carlos, more just if there are specific buildings that make reference, and I just think with the 100th anniversary and the History Museum, there may be ways to sort of highlight some of those buildings and maybe, eventually put some resources behind, a walking tour or other things, just as we sort of, capture what the historic significance of things, so.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't dare oppose this.
All right, better not. Yeah, we know someone who's on the History Museum board.
Yeah.
All right, I think those are the 2 items we had. Is there anything else? And if not, we will adjourn to closed session. Oh my God, I didn't realize it was 10:30.